Chapter 259. I have an eidetic memory. Song Qing-shu joked. He knew very well that before he found the treasure map, he had studied a lot of maps of Liaodong. According to the plot of the original work, he had also calculated several locations, so naturally he knew the topography of that area. Therefore, when he saw the real treasure map, he quickly memorized it. Song Dage, you're amazing, Shuang'er said with emotion. You and Xiaobao are really different. What's the difference? Song Qing-shu was also curious about how Shuang'er would compare him and Xiaobao. Xiaobao is illiterate, but you have an eidetic memory. Xiaobao doesn't know any martial arts, but your martial arts are matchless, but you have one thing in common. That is, you both treat me very well. Shuang'er's eyes revealed a trace of confusion. If Xiaobao didn't die, would you choose me or him? Song Qing-shu couldn't help but ask. As soon as the words left his mouth, he wished he could slap himself. This kind of question was as stupid as the QQ space in his previous life. Your wife and your mother fell into the water at the same time. Who would you save first? Sure enough, Shuang'er's complexion suddenly changed. The blush on her face immediately turned pale. After hesitating for a moment, she murmured, I'm sorry, Song Dage. Who would have thought that Song Qing-shu smiled open-heartedly and said, Shuang'er, it's Song Dage's fault for asking this kind of question. I know your answer. You don't have to blame yourself. After all, the living can't fight the dead. The last sentence was very soft. Perhaps only Song Qing-shu could hear it. Song Dage, I want to be alone for a while. Shuang'er forced a smile at him. The ambiguous atmosphere of the warm and fragrant jade had long since disappeared. Song Qing-shu felt a trace of coldness in the quilt. He was very regretful. He nodded and said, Shuang'er, you rest well. I'll pick you up early tomorrow morning. We'll go to Brother Wei's grave to pay our respects. Shuang'er turned her back to him and buried her head in the quilt. After putting on his clothes, he turned his head to look at Shuang'er's appearance on the bed. He knew that right now, she was immersed in deep guilt and self-blame. Song Qing-shu slapped his own mouth and then quietly jumped out of the window. After returning home, Song Qing-shu naturally did not have the mood to flirt with Nan Lan in the neighboring room. Returning to his bedroom, he began to train his qi, practicing the joyous Zen technique. When the sky was bright, he got up and went to Shuang'er's residence. Just as he pushed open the bedroom door, he was surprised to see Nan Lan supporting Tian Guinong as they strolled in the courtyard. She was wearing a plain blue cotton dress, which made her look more homey. The morning sunlight shone on her shiny black hair, making it look somewhat dazzling. Guinong, take your time. Be careful. Nan Lan carefully held Tian Guinong's arm and led him forward. Seeing her acting like a considerate wife, Song Qing-shu's heart suddenly flashed a trace of regret. Lord Song, long time no see. At this moment, Tian Guinong noticed him and hurriedly cupped his fists in greeting. Beside him, Nan Lan's eyes flickered. She hurriedly lowered her head, not daring to meet his gaze. Brother Tian's recovery is gratifying. Presumably, it won't be long before you'll be full of vigor, Song Qing-shu said. Tian Guinong smiled wryly. It's not like Brother Song doesn't know about my situation. How can I be full of vigor? I should thank the heavens and earth that I can recover my martial arts. With such a considerate wife like Madam taking care of you, Brother Tian will definitely be fine. Song Qing-shu looked at Nan Lan and smiled. Nan Lan's heart tightened. She forced a smile and nodded in response. I've already ordered the servants to purchase a large amount of expensive medicinal ingredients and store them in the residence. They should be able to help Brother Tian recuperate. Song Qing-shu said, Song Mao will be leaving the capital soon. If the two of you need anything, Madam can just ask the servants in the residence. How long will you be gone for? Nan Lan asked reflexively. She was instantly shocked. She secretly glanced at Tian Guinong's expression. Seeing that he didn't seem suspicious at all, she continued, Thank you, Lord Song, for taking care of us. We really don't know how to repay you. I thought you wouldn't dare to speak to me. Song Qing-shu said quietly. Seeing Tian Guinong's ears twitch, he hurriedly raised his voice and said, Madam, there's no need to be so courteous. Brother Tian has already agreed to join me in the future. With Brother Tian's talent, Song Mao will naturally treat him as an honored guest. Furthermore, we are friends." Hearing his words, Nanlon glared at him fiercely. She thought to herself, "If Guanong knew what you've done to me, do you think he would treat you as a friend?" Tian Guanong naturally didn't know any of this. Even though he was in dire straits, he was still treated with such courtesy by Song Qing-shu. Even though he was naturally cold, a trace of warmth rose in his heart. Seeing Song Qing-shu's figure disappear outside the door, Tian Guanong sighed. "Lan I'm a cripple now. For Song Qing-shu to treat me so courteously, I'm afraid it's all thanks to you." Nanlan's heart skipped a beat. She hurriedly said, "What nonsense are you talking about? Brother Song naturally takes a fancy to your abilities and hopes that you can lend him a hand one day. What does that have to do with me?" Looking at his wife's beautiful face, Tian Guanong shook his head. "Song Qing-shu is 10 times more intelligent than me. His martial arts and influence are 100 times more powerful than mine. What abilities do I have that would make him take a fancy to me?" "Lan you're kind-hearted and don't understand how sinister people can be. In my opinion, he probably has ulterior motives." Nanlan was extremely nervous. She thought that her husband had noticed something. Feeling a little guilty, she said, "That can't be. I can see that Brother Song is clearly a gentleman." At this point, Nanlan paused and spat her heart. She then continued, "Furthermore, he's an important official of the court. How could he take a fancy to a ruined woman like me? Sai, do you think he's taken a fancy to Qingwen?" Tian Guanong shook his head and said, "Although Qingwen is somewhat good-looking, she can't compare to someone as beautiful as you. In the past in Shengjing, which high official or noble wouldn't stare at you when they saw you?" Nanlan pretended to be angry and said, "Prince Song is taking care of us out of goodwill, but you're gauging the heart of a gentleman with your own mean measure. Lanner, don't be angry." Tian Guanong smiled sheepishly. "This is called guarding against others. This isn't actually a bad thing. You're too beautiful, and I don't have any power or influence right now. I can't protect you. If he has feelings for you, he'll naturally protect you. You're getting more and more ridiculous." Nanlan spat and stopped him. "Could it be that he's coveting your wife, and you're still so magnanimous?" "Of course I wouldn't in the past, but now I—" Tian Guanong's tone was filled with endless sadness. "Guanong, don't think about that. I'll always be by your side." Nanlan held his hand and comforted him. Tian Guanong nodded noncommittally. His eyes were shining brightly, but no one knew what he was thinking. Looking at the plaque on the Viscount's residence, Song Qing-shu was a little absent-minded. He could use his qinggong to sneak in at night to steal incense and jade, so he naturally wouldn't dare to do so in broad daylight. After being notified, Song Qing-shu finally walked in. "Shuang, I had a fierce battle last night, and then fell into endless sorrow." When they met again today, she couldn't hide the weariness on her face. Song Qing-shu chatted with her for a while, and then suggested that they go to Little Treasure's grave outside the city to pay their respects just like they had agreed last night. "Brother Song, please wait a moment. I'll send someone to prepare incense, candles, and paper money." Shuang Er's reply made Song Qing-shu heave a sigh of relief. After last night's disturbance, he was worried that Shuang Er wouldn't go today. Song Qing-shu's main purpose in cremating the treasure map in front of Wei Xiaobao's grave was to lessen Wei Xiaobao's shadow in Shuang Er's heart. The treasure map was embroidered on Shuang Er's underwear. Such a close-fitting object, Shuang Er would see it as soon as she slept. It was inevitable that she would think of Wei Xiaobao. Once it was burned, Shuang it would naturally gradually forget Wei Xiaobao as time passed. After all, time was the best medicine for all pain. "Brother Song, I won't go. You saved me and Shuang last time, and I still haven't properly thanked you. I'll cook a few dishes at home. When you come back, I'll treat you well." Fong Yi stood up and said. Song Qing-shu saw that Fong Yi was still as gentle and charming as when he first saw her. Her pretty face was both angry and happy at the same time. In his heart, he thought it was strange. This woman did not look like she had just lost her husband. On the way to the outskirts of the city, Song Qingshu could not bear not to approach Shuang-er and ask, Shuang-er, why didn't Fang Yi come with us to pay her respects to Wei Xiaobao? Although he felt that burning the treasure map in front of Fang Yi would be a bit of a hindrance, it was even more strange that she did not come. Shuang-er was worried that other people would see her. Subconsciously, she moved a bit further away from Song Qingshu. When she found out that Tao Hong, Lilu, two girls were not by her side, but rather several zhang behind her, she could not help but secretly stomping her foot. Without any better option, she replied, Miss Fang has always looked down on Xiaobao. She is a famous chivalrous woman in the Wulian world. She is also beautiful. Naturally, she will not like Xiaobao, who was born as a hoodlum. Previously, she was forced to tacitly accept the title of Xiaobao's first wife. But in her heart, she has never regarded Xiaobao as her husband. Looking at her expression, after today's banquet with Song Dage, I am afraid she will leave the Viscount mansion. She and Xiaobao have only known each other for a short time. She still cannot fully feel Xiaobao's merits. Therefore, I do not blame her for making this choice. Shuang-er, you are really kind-hearted. Song Qingshu recalled that in the original work, Fang Yi also deceived Wei Xiaobao several times and almost killed him. Later, after going through trials and tribulations together, she felt that Wei Xiaobao was sincerely good to her, so she was willing to become Wei Xiaobao's wife. Right now, the relationship between the two of them had not progressed to that stage. Naturally, he would not be as sad as Shuang-er. What qualifications do I have to blame her? Shuang-er faintly sighed. Shuang-er, this is all my fault. Song Qingshu knew that she felt sorry for Wei Xiaobao, so he quickly consoled her. Song Dage, you have never forced me to do anything. I am willing to do all of this. How is this your fault? Shuang-er revealed a trace of a smile, stretched out her small hand, and touched every word on the tombstone in front of her, muttering to herself, Xiaobao, I am sorry. Chapter 260. Xiaobao, when you were alive, you were always searching for the secret of the 42-chapter sutra. Now, I've completed the treasure map of the Great Qing's dragon vein. It's all embroidered on this piece of clothing. Take a look. After lighting the incense and burning the paper money, Shuang took out the underwear she had prepared earlier from her bag. She was about to put in the brazier when she suddenly stopped and hesitated. Shuang-er, what's wrong? Noticing her action, Song Qingshu's heart sank. Looking at this piece of clothing, I can think of Xiaobao. I can't bear to burn it like this, Shuang said after hesitating for a while. If you can't bear to, then don't burn it. Keep it as a souvenir. Although Song Qingshu was unwilling, he wouldn't force her to burn it. He's already gone. What's the use of keeping the clothes? Shuang-er thought for a while and finally sighed. She threw the clothes into the brazier. Looking at the clothes that were gradually turning into ashes, Shuang-er sighed in her heart. Xiaobao, I don't know if you'll be happy or sad when you see these clothes. Brother Wei, after you died, the people you offended in your previous life all came out to bully Shuang-er? I was forced to save Shuang. It's a long story. I'll definitely take good care of Shuang-er for you. If you have any resentment, take it out on me. Don't blame Shuang-er. Song Qingshu bowed toward the tombstone. Why are you saying these things here? Shuang was a bit angry. She looked at the tombstone, her face alternating between red and white. Finally, she said, Xiaobao, I'm sorry. Brother Song and I. All right, but he's a gentleman. Don't blame him. If you want to blame someone, blame me for being fickle. Shuang-er, don't say that about yourself. Song Qingshu pulled Shuang-er into his embrace and pressed his lips against hers. Shuang immediately struggled out of his embrace. She looked at the tombstone and said, Xiaobao, when I have time in the future, I'll come to see you. Song Qingshu always felt that this sentence was a little strange, but for a moment, he couldn't figure out what was strange. Before he could figure it out, Shuang-er picked up the basket on the ground, turned around and said, Song Dage, let's go. Song Qingshu did not immediately follow. Instead, he used his inner force to light 3 incense sticks and bowed to Wei Xiaobao's tombstone. The corner of his mouth opened. He had 1,000 words to say, but in the end, he did not say a single word. You two damn girls. Why are you so far away from me? Shuang'er arrived in front of Tao Hong and Liu Lu, and suddenly her complexion changed slightly. Did you see anything just now? It turned out that Shuang'er was worried that when Song Qingshu hugged her just now, it was seen by the two servant girls. Isn't it because we want to give you and Song Darren some private space? The two servant girls pouted. Suddenly, their eyes brightened. Could it be that something happened just now? No, nothing. Don't talk nonsense in front of Big Brother Song in the future. Shuang'er calmed herself down and immediately pulled a long face. Yes, madam. Liulu bowed and pursed her lips into a smile. We know you are thin-skinned. We won't let you down. You two damn girls, really? Shuang'er was ashamed and angry, just as she was about to act as the hostess, who knew that Song Qingshu had already come to her side. What's wrong with them? Hearing Song Qingshu's question, Shuang'er only felt suffocated. She smiled embarrassedly and said, Nothing. We've been out for a long time. Fong Jij's dishes should be ready. Let's go back. Song Darren, you don't know, although second Madame Fong's cooking is good, it's far worse than Madame's. Tao Hong immediately interrupted. Hearing this, Shuang'er's face darkened. She said, If you don't speak, no one will think you're mute. After returning to the Viscount mansion, Fong Yi had indeed prepared a table of wine and dishes. Although it was not too sumptuous, it was exquisite. After Song Qingshu sat down, Fong Yi poured a cup of wine and handed it to Song Qingshu. Song Dage, this cup of wine is little sister thanking Big Brother for taking care of Shuang'er Jiji these days. Miss Fong is too polite. This is what I should do, When he took the wine cup, he accidentally touched the skin on her hand. He only felt that it was extremely tender and smooth. Song Qingshu's heart jumped, and he quickly spoke to cover up the embarrassment in his heart. Looking at the faintly discernible shyness on Fong Yi's face, Song Qingshu secretly smacked his lips. No wonder Wei Xiaobao, who had always been a swindler, was cheated by Fong Yi several times in a row. Fong Yi's beauty was something that even he, who was accustomed to seeing beautiful women, could not control himself, let alone Wei Xiaobao, who was originally a gangster. After downing a cup of fine wine, Fong Yi's face turned slightly red. She continued to pour another cup for Song Qingshu. This second cup of wine is to thank Big Brother for saving my life last time. Miss Fong, I am embarrassed to drink this cup of wine. Speaking of this, I am really ashamed. That time, I wanted to save you in Shun Tian Fu, but I found out that you had already been rescued by the people of Mu Palace. Song Qingshu said somewhat awkwardly. If it wasn't for Big Brother Song stopping me that night, I'm afraid I would have fallen into the hands of that bastard Olundai. I'm afraid my fate would be extremely miserable. Big Brother Song's cup of wine is well-deserved. Seeing that Song Qingshu still had the intention to decline, Fong Yi looked at Shuang'er and said with a smile, Shuang'er Jiejia, don't you agree? Big Brother Song, don't decline. Sister Fong's hands are sore from holding the wine. Shuang'er also chimed in. All right then. Song Qingshu took the wine cup and drank it in one gulp. This third cup, seeing that Fong Yi had started to pour wine again, Song Qingshu's expression immediately changed. Why is there a third cup? Song Qingshu was not afraid of drinking. With his alcohol tolerance, which had been influenced by the strong liquor of various countries in his previous life, drinking 3 cups of this level of alcohol was not a problem. It was just that wine was the medium of sex. Although he could not get drunk, it could magnify the desire in his heart. As a transmigrator, Song Qingshu did not really care about the etiquette of this world. If he was stimulated by the wine, it was not impossible for him to let go of his restraint and seduce Fong Yi. Right now, Song Qingshu and Shuang'er were in the honeymoon period. Naturally, he did not want to cause too much trouble. However, Fong Yi did not have the intention to give up. Instead, she smiled. Big Brother Song, listen to what little sister has to say first. It's not too late to decide whether to drink or not. Fong Yi's words were simple, but her voice lingered in her throat several times, sounding soft and sweet. Song Qingshu's heart skipped a beat. Why does this scene look like Pan Jinlian seducing Wu Song? For the time being, let's see what she is trying to sell. Thereupon he laughed and said, I am all ears. After Xiao Bao passed away, the Tong family bullied us. His old friends all looked on coldly from the sidelines. In Jing, only Big Brother Song dared to lend a helping hand. Little sister's heart is grateful and full of admiration. I feel that the one who can be called a hero in this world is none other than Big Brother Song. Big Brother Song, do you think you should drink this cup of wine or not? Sister-in-law, you've already called me a hero. How can I act coy? I'll drink this cup of wine. Song Qing-shu laughed loudly. He raised the cup and drank in one gulp. Fang Yi smiled and nodded. She poured another cup. Song Qing-shu exclaimed in surprise, "You still want to drink? This cup of wine is not for Big Brother." Fang Yi shook her head and handed it in front of Shuang. "Good Shuanger, Fang Yi is indebted to you for taking care of me during this period of time. This cup of wine is specially to thank you. Big Sister Fang, we are all family. It's too polite to say these things." Although Shuanger said this, she still raised the cup and drank it in one gulp. "This second cup is actually for me to say goodbye to you." Fang Yi filled the cup in front of Shuanger. Shuanger's expression changed, but she quickly recovered and sighed faintly. "Big Sister Fang, I've always understood your thoughts. Since Xiao Bao has already passed away, there's really no meaning for you to stay here. All right, I hope that we will always be good sisters." Seeing the two women in front of him blush unconsciously after drinking, looking more delicate than flowers, Song Qing-shu's heart fantasized for a while. Isn't it easy to be good sisters forever? At worst, I'll just have to work hard for a while. In my previous life, I liked the word bosom friends the most. Sister-in-law, what kind of wine is this? It feels quite strong. Song Qing-shu felt his stomach was in a mess. As a well-known entrepreneur in his previous life, Song Qing-shu had drunk a lot of world-famous spirits: Polish vodka, Scottish whiskey, Jamaican rum, China's Hongshui Lao Baigon. Song Qing-shu had dabbled in all of these spirits. After drinking Fang Yi's wine, although a warm feeling quickly rose in his stomach, it did not have the stimulating feeling of those spirits. Therefore, Song Qing-shu was also very curious. In this era, it was very rare to drink a wine that could cause such a quick reaction. Unexpectedly, Fang Yi's face paled and she muttered, "Big Brother Song Shuanger, I'm sorry." Song Qing-shu was amused. What was there to be sorry about? He suddenly came to his senses and his expression changed greatly. "This wine is poisoned?" Shuanger's beautiful face also paled when she heard this. Right at this moment, a bell-like laughter came from behind the screen. "Song Darren, don't worry. This wine only has a bit of leopard embryo tendon altering pill in it." Song Qing-shu frowned. His figure had already disappeared from his seat. By the time everyone could see clearly, he had already grabbed a beautiful woman in palace robes from behind the screen. His hands were gripping her throat. "I haven't seen you for a long time, but Song Darren's martial arts are still so earth-shattering." The beautiful woman was secretly shocked. She did not expect that she would be subdued by the opponent in one move. Dealing with an expert like cult leader's wife is like a lion fighting a rabbit with all its strength. Song Mao does not dare to be negligent. The woman in front of him was the wife of the divine dragon cult leader in Shangjing, Su Quan. "Song Darren, aren't you afraid that the poison will attack your heart and speed up your death?" Su Quan said with a tender smile. In her heart, she was secretly regretful. This time, she was too careless. She should have brought a few experts from the cult with her. "I'm afraid, of course I'm afraid." Song Qing-shu stuck close to Su Quan's curvy body. He secretly praised her. "She is indeed a stunner." He whispered in her ear, "It's just that I know that even if Miss Fang wanted to poison me, she would not be so heartless as to give me a poison that will seal the throat upon seeing blood. Since I won't die for a while, what are you afraid of?" Song Qing-shu secretly cried out in shame. Right now, he was as calm as the clouds and the wind because he had read the original work. He knew that although the leopard embryo tendon altering pill's poison was peculiar, it would take a year before it would take effect. Su Quan's beautiful eyes shone with a strange splendor. She thought how many brave men in Jianghu would be scared out of their wits when they heard the leopard embryo tendon altering pill. She did not expect that Song Qing-shu would be so calm, even though he knew he was poisoned. Chapter 261. Sister-in-law, you don't have to blame yourself. Brother Song promised to detoxify you before, but he didn't do it, so you were threatened by the scoundrels. He really deserved it. Although Song Qing-shu's words were light and breezy, he still hated Fang Yi's actions in his heart. However, it was useless to speak ill of Fang Yi. It was better to do her a favor and leave Fang Yi with remorse in her heart. Maybe she could be of help in the future. Fang Yi's expression was complicated. What she said just now was just a subconscious explanation to evade responsibility. If she was given another choice, she would still make the same choice. For a long time, Fang Yi had a hidden resentment in her heart. It was also the divine Dragon Island who threatened her that day. In order to save Xuan Wei Xiaobao immediately took out the 42-chapter sutra to save her. But when she and the little princess were threatened, Wei Xiaobao made many excuses, saying that he did not have the 42-chapter sutra. After this incident, Fang Yi hated Wei Xiaobao and even disliked Xuan. Originally, Fang Yi had always had a good impression of Song Qing-shu. Unfortunately, last time when Olundai forced her to the door, she and Xuan obviously did it together, but in the end, she was taken away alone. In prison, Fang Yi still had a glimmer of hope, waiting for Song Qing-shu to save her. As a result, Song Qing-shu had been busy with Xuan's affairs and thought that she was not in danger in prison for the time being, so he did not care about her. When Song Qing-shu solved this matter satisfactorily and was ready to rescue her, he did not know that she had already been rescued. It was not Song Qing-shu that Fang Yi waited for, but Su Quan. After coming out, she had been watching coldly Song Qing-shu lingering in the musical house to accompany Xuan. In addition, Su Quan teased him from time to time. Fang Yi's heart was full of hatred. Why do all men like Xuan the most? Why? When Su Quan asked her to poison the food and wine, Fang Yi actually did not resist as much as she showed on the surface. She even felt a little happy. She could let the two of them taste the same pain, so why not? However, she had always been calm, so she showed a look of helplessness. Traitor! Hearing Song Qing-shu's words, Su Quan sneered and said, "Who can compare to you, Lord Song? During the last trip to Xingjing, it was because I believed that Lord Song was a gentleman that my divine dragon cult was completely annihilated." Song Qing-shu immediately cried out in injustice. "Madam Hong, this is your fault. The imperial court has also sent people to investigate the coup in Xingjing. It was clearly your subordinate Thin Tuchuo who betrayed you. How can you blame me?" Speaking of this, Su Quan felt depressed. Although she had always wanted to eradicate these elders of the divine sect, she didn't want to do it in this way. Thin Tuchuo had always had a silly appearance, and she didn't expect that he would be tricked like this. Afterwards, Su Quan specially went to investigate who Thin Tuchuo's daughter was, but in the end, she had no clue. Thin Tuchuo is honest and straightforward by nature. How could he set up such an ingenious and deadly trap? There must be an expert guiding him from behind. Su Quan's expression and tone clearly confirmed that this expert was Song Qing-shu. Song Qing-shu smiled. "I can't take responsibility for such a big matter. Madam Hong, although we are familiar with each other, if you speak carelessly, I will sue you for slander." In fact, Su Quan wasn't sure. She only suspected that there was this person behind Thin Tuchuo. Thinking about it, the most suspicious person was Song Qing-shu, but she didn't have the slightest evidence, so she couldn't help but be somewhat depressed. "Who is familiar with you? If you aren't familiar with me, why did Madam throw herself into my arms as soon as you saw me?" Song Qing-shu's hand tightened, and he tightly hugged Su Quan in his arms. Picking up a cup of wine, he placed it next to her lips. "Madam is a guest from afar. Qing-shu offers you a cup." A trace of anger flashed in Su Quan's eyes, but her whole body was restrained, so she could only revert back to her former misty and coquettish appearance. She giggled and said, "Originally, Song Darren didn't dare to refuse this gift, but this wine contains the leopard embryo tendon-altering pill. Is Darren really willing to force me to drink it?" After saying that, she tightly closed her lips, afraid that he would take the opportunity to pour the wine into her mouth. It's useless no matter how tightly you close your little mouth. As long as I press on your laughing acupoint, when you're trembling like a flower, I naturally have a way to make you drink this wine. Song Qingshu's finger moved to her waist, making a poking motion. It's useless even if you make me drink this wine. Only Jiaozhu has the antidote for the leopard embryo tendon altering pill. If you want to force me to take out the antidote, you're really miscalculating. If you don't believe me, you can ask Miss Fong. Su Quan smiled tenderly. Seeing Song Qingshu turn his head, Fong nodded with a pale face, obviously agreeing with Su Quan's words. Don't blame me for not reminding you. The antidote for the leopard embryo tendon altering pill has always been refined by Jiaozhu once a year. Some time ago, Jiaozhu has been in closed-door training, and now Hong Li's army is here. This year, Jiaozhu hasn't had time to refine the antidote. There are only a few pills left on the island from last year. If I'm poisoned, Jiaozhu will definitely give me one. At that time, whether there will be enough left for you to share, I'm not sure. Although Su Quan's throat was restrained, there was not a trace of panic on her face. When she spoke of all this, she was still clear, neither fast nor slow, and her voice was still gentle and pleasant. Seeing this, Song Qingshu secretly admired her in his heart. Seeing that Song Qingshu was silent, Su Quan continued to say, "With Song Darren's martial arts, it's easy to capture me. Why do you keep holding my neck like this? Besides," Su Quan paused. She moved her mouth close to Song Qingshu's ear. Using a voice that only the two of them could hear, she said, "Little man, Ben Foreign can feel that your body has changed. You are making me very uncomfortable." Song Qingshu's old face blushed. Turned out, when he was holding Su Quan in his arms, he felt her exquisite and delicate body struggling slightly. When the tip of his nose smelled the fragrance from her hair, unexpectedly he had a reaction. Really an evil spirit, Song Qingshu cursed under his breath, but he was not willing to let her take the initiative like this. He did not immediately release her. Instead, he softly replied to her, "Madam is lying with your eyes open. Since you can feel it, why don't you tell me which part of me is small? Right now, Hong Jiaozhu is old and weak. He should be far inferior to me, right?" Vulgar. Su Quan's pretty face suddenly became as red as rouge. She fiercely spat. Although Su Quan liked to use her beauty to make the stinky man in her eyes fall head over heels for her, she did not go too far. After all, she was not a prostitute who could sleep with anyone. How could she endure such explicit words? Naturally, she was not Song Qingshu's opponent, who had been influenced by countless dirty jokes in the future. Song Qing laughed and gave up the idea of forcing her to drink. With a gentle push of his hand, a soft force pushed her out. Of course, before letting go, he did not forget to collect some interest. His hidden left hand quietly pinched Su Quan's fragrant buttocks, only to feel that it was soft and bouncy. "Madame Jiaozhu." Fang Yi saw that Su Quan's body was unsteady. She quickly ran over to support her. She did not give up any opportunity to curry favor. Su Quan brushed away the hand that Fang Yi placed on her body. She fiercely glared at Song Qingshu, but she did not plan to make it public. "Madame Jiaozhu, why are you in such a miserable situation now? You came here alone, without even a single attendant." Calm and unruffled, Song Qingshu sat down again. He picked up the wine pot and poured himself a cup of wine. He was about to drink when Shuang hastily cried out in alarm, "Poison, Song Dage." Song Qingshu revealed a smile and said, "In any case, I'm already poisoned. I'm not afraid to drink some more. Divine Dragon Island's leopard embryo tendon altering pill. As long as the antidote is taken, it can be considered a great tonic." Inside the room, the three women watched Song Qingshu pour himself a cup and drink by himself, as if he was as light as clouds and as light as the breeze. Each one had a complicated feeling. Shuang was worried that he would be poisoned even deeper. Fang Yi was worried that after she was poisoned, she would be at a loss whether to advance or retreat. Su Quan was very surprised that Song Qingshu did not take it seriously at all. Among the Divine Dragon cult disciples, who did not turn deathly pale after taking the leopard embryo tendon altering pill, trembling with fear. How could they be like him, who treated it as if it was a candy? Song Dage, I will drink with you. Shuang hesitated for a moment. At first she was somewhat worried that Fong, Yi, and the others would see through their unusual relationship, but then she had a second thought. Perhaps the two of them were going to die soon. Why would she care about this? Thereupon she relaxed her mind, feeling that as long as she could share life and death with Song Qing-shu, there was nothing to be afraid of. Fong Yi moved her feet, but in the end she did not take that step. Seeing Shuang walking toward him, Song Qing-shu shook his head and said, I'd better not. This wine is a great tonic for men. If it is too much, worst comes to worst, we'll go to the brothel to find a woman to relieve ourselves. Sister-in-law, if it is too much, Wei Xiongdi is already dead. We won't be able to dispel the virtual fire in your body. Shuang was angry and bitter in her heart. She thought, what kind of situation is this? Yet he is still babbling nonsense. Listening to him, Fong Yi was dumbstruck. She thought, isn't Song Dage's speech and bearing always modest and modest gentlemen? How could he speak without scruples like this? A few days ago the news was spread all over the capital that Song Dage lingered at Gunyang's residence and did not leave for several days. If Gunyang is on fire, can't Song Dage help her dispel it? Su Quan rolled her eyes and said with a tender laugh, Sister-in-law and I are as pure as the sun and the moon. Naturally, we are not afraid of slanderous people's gossiping. Song Qing-shu's words made Shuang blush. This kind of words that went against his conscience. Only he could say it. But for you, Song Qing-shu stopped talking. His face revealed an ambiguous smile. What about me? Su Quan was taken aback. Previously, I fought with Hong Jiaozhu. I'm very clear about his martial arts style. If Zaixia is not mistaken, I am afraid Hong Jiaozhu's internal energy does not allow him to get close to women. I heard that Hong Jiaozhu has been practicing this skill for more than 10 years. Presumably Foreign has been suffering from drought for a long time. If Foreign does not mind, I can reluctantly help Foreign dispel the fire. As soon as he said that, the three women's countenance turned extremely strange, especially Fong Yi's. Compared to the shock of the revelation, Song Qing-shu's provocation was actually not that big of a deal. Su Quan's heart was beating wildly. Jiaozhu kept this matter a secret. In the entire Shunlong Jiao, other than herself, nobody knew about this secret. How could he know? However, very quickly she recovered from her shock. With a calm and collected manner she sneered and said, It's simply a load of nonsense. If Song Dage's words were heard by Jiaozhu, I am afraid he can forget about getting the antidote. Chapter 262. Su Quan did not intend to let him know about her current predicament. She just nonchalantly tidied up her dress. Fong Yi, who was on the side, very tactfully moved a chair over. Su Quan smiled in satisfaction and gracefully sat down. Her slender fingers tucked a strand of hair that was scattered in front of her eyes behind her ear. She said with a faint smile, Since I alone can deal with the famous Song Darren, why would Shun Long Jiao send more experts? Really? Song Qing-shu looked thoughtful and secretly regretted that he had been busy with Shuang's matter and had forgotten to pay attention to the current situation in Liaodong. There was too little information, so he could not analyze the strangeness in front of him. Seeing Song Qing-shu frowning and silently drinking alone, Su Quan smiled ambiguously and said, Could it be that Song Darren plans to sit like this with others until dawn? Listening to her coquettish laughter, Shuang and Fong Yi secretly frowned. Fong Yi spat in her heart. Sure enough, she is a slut, so blatantly seducing other men. Of course, she did not dare to say these words. Standing behind Su Quan, she still had a respectful appearance. Song Qing-shu's thoughts were in a mess. Hearing her voice, he was too lazy to think anymore and let out a long laugh. Song Mao has been thinking about the answer to a question. I wonder if Song Darren has thought of the answer. Su Quan raised her hand and motioned for Fong Yi to bring her a cup of tea. Although Fong Yi was extremely angry, she still did not dare to go against her wishes. I can't figure it out, and I don't intend to continue thinking about it, Song Qing-shu said. Madam, Just say it directly. What do you want Song Mao to do? Su Quan was obviously very satisfied with his reaction. She nodded and said, I just want to invite Song Darren and Shuang Er to Divine Dragon Island as guests. Impossible. Song Qing Shu flatly refused. Madam, don't treat me as a fool. With the grudge between me and cult leader Hong, even if I obediently listen to Madam, you will not give me the antidote. If that's the case, why don't I spend the last year of my life in a carefree and unrestrained manner? The three women fell into silence. They had been in Jianghu for a long time, and they had seen many people who usually boasted that they were heroes, but when faced with a life or death situation, they all cried bitterly and wagged their tails to beg for mercy. Even if there were some who were not afraid of death, they could not be as calm as Song Qing Shu. Lord Song may not know the toxicity of the leopard embryo tendon-changing pill, Su Quan finally said. Lord Song must have seen fat and thin Duda. Do you know why thin Duda is short and fat Duda is tall and thin? Without waiting for Song Qing Shu to answer, Su Quan continued. At that time, fat Tucho was indeed short and fat, and thin Tucho was also tall and thin. As a result, one time, the two of them didn't return to Divine Dragon Island in time to get the antidote, and the leopard embryo tendon altering pill took effect, and they became what they are now. If they didn't take the antidote in the end, I'm afraid they would have died miserably. Shuang Er's hair stood on end when she heard this. Although Fong Yi already knew the leopard embryo tendon altering pill's effect, she still felt a chill on her back when she heard it. Which woman didn't cherish their own appearance? It was precisely because she was worried that she would become like Thin Duda that Fong Yi listened to Su Quan's words. Young Master Song's martial arts are excellent, and you are handsome and spirited. He will certainly win the hearts of many beautiful women. If this handsome face becomes Thin Duda's short and melon-like appearance, do you think those beautiful women will still fall in love with you? As Su Quan spoke, she turned around and stood in front of Shuang Er. She stared at Shuang Er's pretty face with a faint smile. Shuang Er panicked under her stare. She quickly said, If you're talking about Song Dage, then talk about Song Dage. Why are you looking at me? Su Quan revealed an as expected expression. She smiled and said, Miss Shuang Er has also been poisoned. I am worried that with your beautiful face, like a flower in the moon, I don't know what will happen to you. Finished speaking, she stretched out her finger and scratched Shuang Er's face. As a woman, she had no choice but to admit that Shuang Er's skin was incomparably tender and smooth. Shuang did not have time to get angry. Su Quan turned around to look at Song Qing Shu and said with a laugh, Song Darren, even if you don't think about yourself, you must think about Miss Shuang Er. Song Qing Shu calmly said, I have already thought about it. Based on Shuang Er's character, she will certainly not be willing to drag out an ignoble existence and be ordered around by Shun Long Jiao like a dog. I will accompany her for the rest of her days. I think she will not blame me. Tears welled up in Shuang Er's eyes. Although it was very light, she nodded her head very resolutely. On the side, as Fong Yi heard Song Qing Shu's words and then looked at Shuang Er's reaction, her chest felt as if it was struck by a big hammer. Her countenance turned deathly pale. Su Quan was also somewhat angry and bitter. She did not expect Song Qing Shu to be impervious to oil and salt. However, right now she was in imminent danger. Plus, she urgently needed Song Qing Shu to make a trip to the island. Rolling her eyes, she came up with a plan. Song Darren's bearing, she said, Chebin admires very much. However, if I am willing to give Miss Shuang the antidote, what's wrong with you coming to the island? As soon as she said that, Song Qing Shu immediately raised his head. Fong Yi's eyes also brightened. Su Quan took out a pill from her bosom. Seeing Song Qing Shu's body slightly moved, she hastily put the pill in her mouth. Just now I have seen Song Darren's footwork, she said. How can Shebin dare to lower my guard? If you take another step forward, I will take this antidote. Song Darren, you can guess. Are you faster or am I faster? Song Qing Shu spread out his hands and retreated several steps back. With a vexed expression, he said, I really regret not seizing the opportunity to search Madam's body just now. An imperceptible trace of blush appeared on Su Quan's pretty face. She laughed tenderly and said, Song Darren is an upright gentleman. Naturally, you will not make things difficult for a woman like me. Song Qingshu suddenly stared at her, revealing a trace of a strange smile. Now I have thought of a question, he said. There is no harm for madam to guess. What? Su Quan was startled. Her expression suddenly changed greatly. It turned out that Song Qingshu's figure had already disappeared from his original position. She hastily threw the antidote into her mouth, planning to swallow it. Song Qingshu turned his hand around and grabbed Su Quan's throat so that she could not swallow it. I was thinking, since madam was able to take out an antidote from your bosom, could there be a second antidote? Su Quan laughed coldly and said, Bin Foreign knows that Song Darren's martial arts are superior. How could I be so stupid as to bring an antidote to poison you? This antidote was just a precaution. I don't believe it. Song Qingshu shook his head. After the initial shock, Su Quan had already recovered. Hearing what was said, she stuck out her chest and gave a soft humph. If Darren doesn't believe me, feel free to reach out and search me. Not good, not good. There are actually breasts shaking. Song Qingshu's eyes stared blankly. If Shuang, and Fong Yi were not present at this moment, perhaps Song Qingshu would really search her. He secretly exclaimed, what a pity. He was unwilling to destroy the image he had built up over a long period of time. He had no choice but to say to Fong, Miss Fong, come and help me search. Song Qingshu was fully aware that the Divine Dragon Island was an expert in using poison. He was worried that there was something strange in Su Quan's bosom. Naturally, he did not want Shuang to take the risk. Seeing Fong Yi's hesitant expression, Song Qingshu said, Miss Fong, if you find the antidote, you don't need to be threatened by the Divine Dragon Island anymore. Seeing Fong Yi hesitantly walk toward her, Su Quan's long, shapely eyebrows slanted up. You dare! Frightened by her former prestige, Fong Yi's hand, which was halfway extended, immediately stopped. Seeing this, Song Qingshu said, Miss Fong, you're only proving your Jiaozhu madam's innocence by rescuing her from my hands. Not only you are not at fault, you have performed a meritorious service. Madam will not blame you, unless she plans to stay in my bosom forever. Don't you think so, madam? Humph! Su Quan coldly snorted. Obviously, she tacitly agreed. Fong Yi got the hint. She reached out her hand and groped Su Quan's bosom. Because she was angry with Su Quan, Fong Yi did not know why, but for a moment she was extremely daring. She deliberately pinched the sensitive part of Su Quan's bosom. Su Quan's heart jumped. Seeing that Song Qingshu did not notice her little action, she coldly looked at Fong Yi and said, Your guts are not small. As soon as Fong Yi finished pinching, she immediately regretted it. However, since things had come to this, it was useless to regret. She hardened her heart and pinched several more times. Su Quan and Hong Antong's identity as husband and wife was in name, but not in reality. Now that she was leaning in Song Qingshu's bosom, smelling his manly scent, and her sensitive part being wantonly pinched by Fong Yi, her breathing immediately became rapid. Feeling the body of the extraordinarily beautiful woman in his bosom was getting softer and softer, Song Qingshu was startled. He thought, this Su Quan's body shouldn't be this sensitive, right? I just hug her a little bit, and she is already aroused? How is it? Did you find it? Song Qingshu looked at Fong Yi and asked. A trace of complacency flashed across Fong Yi's face. She shook her head and said, There is no antidote, only the leopard embryo tendon altering pill. Su Quan glared at Fong Yi and said, I'll deal with you later. Song Qingshu and the others thought she was talking about how Fong Yi dared to search her body. Only Fong Yi knew what she was talking about. Are you satisfied now? Su Quan slightly tilted her head and looked at Song Qingshu. Seeing a trace of moisture flash across her long and bright, beautiful eyes, Song Qingshu also felt that he went a bit too far. He promptly said, As long as Madame Jiaozhu agrees to give Shuang the antidote, I will go with you to the Divine Dragon Island. I don't agree. At this time, Shuang stood up. You don't have the right to speak. I'll take charge of this matter. Shuang saw Song Qingshu secretly give her a meaningful glance. Although she didn't understand, she still chose to believe him. So she nodded and said in a gentleman's word. Su Quan said in a deep voice. A whip on a fast horse, Song Qingshu answered. She carefully sized up Song Qingshu's expression, as if she was trying to discern whether he was speaking the truth or not. After a while, Su Quan smiled and said, All right, I believe you. Why aren't you letting me go? Song Qingshu released his hand. Su Quan walked toward Shuang. Her expression was rather playful as she said, You really listen to Song Darren. I don't even know if I should call Shuang or Mimi Wei or Lady Song. I can't be bothered. Shuang had not finished speaking when Su Quan seized the opportunity to kiss her. Before she could react, the antidote had already entered Shuang's mouth. Shuang pushed Su Quan away and bent over to the side to retch. Su Quan laughed tenderly and said, Shuang Mimi, if you spit out the antidote, you will waste Song Darren's good intention. So disgusting. Shuang did not stop wiping her mouth as she looked at Song Qingshu with an aggrieved expression. Song Qingshu did not expect Su Quan would use such an erotic way to give Shuang the antidote. He could not help laughing and said, All right, Shuang, our Madame Jiaozhu is such 1,000 tender and 100 charming great beauty. Her fragrant lips are definitely sweet. Don't complain. Try it yourself, and you will know whether it's sweet or not, Shuang said gloomily. Chapter 263. Is what Madam said true? Song Qingshu's eyes lit up. Su Quan was obviously stunned. Seeing his eager look, she knew that she couldn't deal with him like she dealt with other men. Her tone immediately became cold. Of course it's false. At the same time, her face seemed to emit a holy radiance. Is your period coming? You change your face so fast. Song Qingshu gloomily looked at the soft-spoken, coquettish beauty turn into a serious young married woman. He really couldn't wrap his head around it. Darren Song, I have given Miss Shuang the antidote. I hope you will go to the Divine Dragon Island with me, according to the agreement. Su Quan looked at him nervously. Although people in Jianghu all looked at promises, Song Qingshu's words and actions really didn't look like that of a straightforward Jianghu person. I can hear Madam's heartbeat quicken. Song Qingshu smiled. What? Are you worried that I will turn my back on you? Hearing Song Qingshu's words, Su Quan subconsciously touched her chest and said pitifully, Of course I'm worried. Darren Song's martial arts are high, and you don't care about life and death. I'm just a woman and really can't do anything. What a good Shi cupping heart. Song Qingshu looked at her in admiration. Su Quan's face blushed and unexpectedly showed a bit of shyness. Darren Song is flattering me. I'm just a willow. How can I dare to compare with you? Fang Yi looked at the cult master's wife, who had always been seductive, and was suddenly stunned. She cursed in her heart. What a shameless, adulterous couple. They don't even care about the impact and get up in front of everyone. Humph, I used to think that Brother Song is a modest gentleman, but I didn't expect him to be the same as Wei Xiaobao, a glib-tongued bastard. Song Qingshu naturally didn't know that his image in Fang Yi's heart had fallen to the level of the Mariana Trench. He looked at Su Quan and said, Cult Master's wife, rest assured. Although I'm not a person who keeps his promises, I generally won't deliberately deceive a beauty. I'll go to the Divine Dragon Island with you. When will we leave? A trace of joy flashed across Su Quan's face. She said with a smile, It's better to be on time than early. Let's go now. In such a hurry? Song Qingshu frowned. You can't. Shuang promptly stopped him. Big Brother Song, if you go to the Divine Dragon Island, you will only have a slim chance of survival. There's still another life. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing, Song Qingshu replied. Hearing him say that, Shuang thought that he might have some kind of plan, but she was still worried. She said, If you must go, I'll go with you. Seeing Su Quan and Fang Yi's strange expression, she quickly added, One more person means one more helper. We owe you a debt of gratitude. I can't watch you take risks. Shuang you should know my martial arts. I'm alone, and if I want to go, I can go. No one in the divine dragon cult can stop me. If you go, I'll have to take care of you. Besides, don't you have an appointment with the third young mistress of the Zhuang family to go to Jiaxing to accompany her? As Song Qingshu spoke, he secretly winked at her. Shuang'er was also an orchid with a pure heart. Although she was confused by what he said, she still followed his words and revealed an embarrassed expression. I did promise the third young mistress. Madam Cult Leader, I have something to say to Miss Shuang'er in private. Do you mind? Song Qingshu looked at Su Quan and asked. Su Quan smiled, made a please do as you wish gesture, and turned around. Song Qingshu pulled Shuang'er to a corner and stuffed something into her hand. He lowered his voice and said, Shuang'er, remember, after we leave, you should choose a day to go to the king of Medicine Manor of the White Horse Temple at Daunting Lake. Find the poison hand king of medicine and give this leopard embryo tendon altering pill to him. He has been studying the toxicity of the leopard embryo tendon altering pill for a long time. With this pill, he should be able to develop an antidote soon. It turned out that Fong, he had found the leopard embryo tendon altering pill. When Song Qingshu was inspecting it, he quickly hid one. Shuang'er's hand was held by him. Seeing that no one was paying attention to them, she said happily, I knew Brother Song wouldn't be so stupid as to throw away your life. This is just a way out. Now that the war is in chaos, you have to be careful on the way. Then, Song Qingshu told her the specific address of the king of Medicine Manor. He also mentioned the relationship between him and the people at the king of Medicine Manor. How touching. It's like a woman in her boudoir, seeing off her husband who is going to war. Su Quan was bored waiting at the side and teased him. Shuang'er's face heated up. She gently pushed Song Qingshu and took her hand back. Song Qingshu knew that she didn't want others to know about their relationship, so he turned around and walked toward Su Quan. He looked at her and smiled. Madam Cult Leader, let's go. Following Su Quan and Fong Yi all the way, the sky quickly turned dark. Song Qingshu pulled the reins and stopped. We've been running for so long. It's time to find a place to have a big meal and have a good rest. Okay. Although Su Quan was anxious to return to Divine Dragon Island, she also knew that the three of them couldn't travel day and night. Seeing the two women jump down from the horse's back valiantly, Song Qingshu cursed in his heart. Girls, why don't you take a carriage? Why do you have to ride a horse? This hard saddle makes my butt hurt. Aren't you afraid of breaking that layer of membrane? Su Quan, that slut, is probably long gone. Fong Yi should still be there. I have to think of a way to secretly remind her. I can't let her think that I'm a pervert. Song Qingshu didn't feel that he was worrying for nothing. In his previous life, he could break something by riding a bicycle. Riding a horse should be even more dangerous. Waiter, 3 bowls of yanchun noodles, and help us prepare some steamed buns as dry food. After taking a seat in a nearby inn, Su Quan called the waiter. Hearing this, Song Qingshu's eyes widened. Hey, are you serious? You want me to eat this kind of thing? Su Quan's face turned red. Usually, she didn't bring much money. As a result, the last time she went to Xingjing, she also fled in panic. She didn't dare to directly return to Divine Dragon Island. Now, the only money she had was exchanged by pawning her jewelry. Of course, how could she tell all this to Song Qingshu? She just said, Divine Dragon Island has always been simple. In my opinion, yanchun noodles are good enough. There are still many disaster victims in the world who can't even eat this. Stop. Song Qingshu made a stop gesture. You speak as if your Divine Dragon Temple is a good person who worries about the country and the people. Madam, don't you feel ashamed saying this? It's none of your business, if you want to eat it or not. Su Quan coldly snorted. Sister-in-law, what do you think? Song Qingshu looked at Fong Yi and asked. Fong Yi had poisoned him, so she had always felt guilty. She didn't expect that he would suddenly talk to her. She said in a panic, I know everything about Madam's arrangement. Song Qingshu was a little disappointed. Fong Yi was too tolerant. It was a good thing for a person to be tolerant, but as a woman, it was really difficult for people to like her. Fong Yi was obviously a little sorry that she couldn't stand on his side. She quickly said, By the way, Brother Song, don't call me sister-in-law in the future. I actually have nothing to do with Wei Xiaobao. Song Qing had already understood all this. He nodded and said, "Okay, then I'll call you Miss Fong in the future." Su Quan sneered and said, "Wei Xiaobao is really a failure. He just died not long ago, but he can't keep his two wives." Fong Yi's face turned pale. Song Qingshu frowned and said, "I hope Madam will be careful with your words." In the Divine Dragon cult, other than Hong Yantong, Su Quan had always been a person of her word. Who would dare to contradict her in public? Her eyebrows were about to rise, but she suddenly thought that it was just different from the past. There was no need to make things awkward between her and Song Qingshu for such a small matter. Seeing Su Quan sitting there alone, sulking, Song Qingshu quickly called the waiter over. "Waiter, we don't want the Yang Chun noodles anymore. Let's order something new." Before Su Quan could stop him, Song Qingshu said with fervor and assurance, "I'll tell you the dishes I want. Waiter, listen carefully. Bird's nest chicken soup, sea cucumber with pork tendon, kelp with pork moss soup, abalone with pearl vegetables, shark's fin and crab soup, fish maw with ham, steamed camel's hump, pear slices with steamed civet, steamed deer's tail, Christian carp tongue with bear's paw, steamed shad with wine, fake salmon liver." Seeing the waiter's dumbfounded look, Song Qingshu frowned and said, "What's wrong?" Originally, when the waiter saw that the three of them only ordered Yang Chun noodles, he was a little disdainful. Now that he saw them mention so many famous dishes, his first reaction was that they wouldn't eat and dash, right? But seeing that the three of them were well-dressed, the man was handsome, and the woman was delicate and beautiful, and that ordinary people should have never heard of these dishes, he immediately dispelled the doubt in his heart. He smiled flatteringly and said, "Sir, these dishes you ordered are a little too expensive. We don't have them here." Song Qingshu nodded. "I know you can't have all of them here. How about this? You have those dishes in your restaurant, and it doesn't take that much time to cook. Give me a serving of all of them." "Okay." The waiter left with a smile. As soon as the waiter left, Su Quan leaned over and said with gritted teeth, "Do you want to die? You ordered such expensive dishes. Is there a problem?" Song Qingshu shrugged his shoulders. "Since you invited me to the Divine Dragon Island, you should naturally treat me as a distinguished guest. I'm just not used to eating Yang Chun noodles. I just want to eat some home-cooked dishes in the capital. This request is not too much, right? You call this home-cooked dishes?" Su Quan looked at Song Qingshu's matter-of-fact face and was so angry that she almost splashed the tea on his face. "Cult madam, these dishes are indeed quite common at banquets between high-ranking officials and nobles in the capital." "Fong," he said weakly on the side. Su Quan was almost angered to death by Fong Yi, but she was unwilling to admit that she was ignorant, so she could only say stubbornly, "But when you go out, don't show your wealth. If you order dishes so ostentatiously, everyone will think that we are fat sheep. If we attract bandits, we will be in trouble." Did I hear it wrong? The dignified cult madam of the Divine Dragon cult is actually afraid of little bandits? Song Qingshu looked at her with an exaggerated expression. "Forget it. If we really attract bandits, at most I will suffer a little and help you send them away." Chapter 264. You are the cult leader's wife. Don't tell me you don't even have this little money? Song Qingshu asked in astonishment. "I came out in a hurry and didn't bring that much money with me," Su Quan replied awkwardly. "Moreover, the Divine Dragon sect's followers are usually very thrifty, Brother Song." Fong Yi helped Su Quan to explain. "So poor, no wonder they wanted to rebel. If they really wanted to live and work in peace, who would do such a thing?" Song Qingshu despised her in his heart, but soon a trace of doubt appeared in his mind. He thought, but looking at Su Quan, it's not that she cares about money, but that she really can't afford it. She is the cult leader's wife. She shouldn't be so poor, could it be? If they don't have the money to pay the bill, I'll just give them the 3 horses outside. Those horses are pretty good, so it should be enough to pay for a meal, Song Qingshu said nonchalantly. "No, we have to hurry back to Divine Dragon Island. We can't do it without horses." Su Quan flatly refused. She suddenly lowered her voice and said, "Why don't we run after the meal? With our martial arts, they can't catch up with us anyway. That won't do. Eating and running will affect my glorious image. If it gets back to the capital, I will be laughed at by the ministers in the court. No, no. Song Qing-shu shook his head like a rattle and said in his heart, "What's so good about cavalry? Infantry without horses is more satisfying. This won't do, that won't do. You find a way yourself. Anyway, it's all your fault." Su Quan simply didn't care. She thought, when the time comes, I will run first. I don't believe you will be so stupid to stay. It's not like I don't have money. Why should I run? Song Qing-shu took out a stack of notes and slammed them on the table. Su Quan glanced at them. Each note was denominated 100 taels. She immediately clicked her tongue and said bitterly, "You are so generous. You must be greedy." Madam Cultmaster is right. These are all given to me by Wu Sangue and Hongli. They plunder the common people, and I plunder them. This is called enforcing justice on behalf of heaven, Song Qing-shu said with a smile. Looking at Song Qing-shu's nouveau riche look in front of her, and then thinking that the whole divine Dragon Island was counting money to live, Su Quan became angry. "Since you are so rich, you will pay the bill later." "I'm not the one paying the bill. It's Madam," Song Qing-shu corrected. "You clearly know that I don't have any money on me. Are you deliberately playing with me?" Su Quan raised her eyebrows. "I want to trick you, but you definitely won't give it to me." Song Qing-shu swallowed the words he was about to say and said, "If you don't have money, you can borrow it from me. Is there a difference?" Su Quan was stunned. "Of course there is a difference. It was clearly Madam who invited me to Divine Dragon Island to be a guest. You will naturally be responsible for all the expenses. How can it be the other way round and let the guest invite the host?" Song Qing-shu's expression was very surprised. "Lord Song, saying please is just a polite way of saying it. In the end, you are just taking the initiative to seduce or recommend yourself to sleep with me." "Madam's prisoner," Su Quan said with a cold snort. She thought that the other party was too arrogant. "I is so sad." Song Qing-shu covered his chest. "Since it's like this, I will immediately return to the capital and see if Madam has the ability to keep me." Su Quan was shocked and hurriedly said, "Lord Song has already personally promised this concubine to go to Divine Dragon Island. As a man, how can I go back on my word? Whether I keep my promise or not depends on my mood. Now that my mood is bad, I will naturally go back on my word. Why is Madam looking at me like this? Do you want to bite me?" Song Qing-shu said with a smile. Su Quan gritted her teeth in hatred and could only yield. "All right, you win. Take the money as me borrowing it. Words are no proof. You have to write a promissory note." Song Qing-shu called the waiter over. With one glance, he could tell that the three of them were big clients. The waiter naturally eagerly brought the paper and brush over. "How do I write the promissory note?" Su Quan held the brush and furrowed her brows slightly. She had never borrowed money like anyone else in her life. "Let's keep everything simple. Just write that Divine Dragon Island sect leader's wife, Su Quan, borrowed 10,000 taels of silver from Song Qing-shu today." Song Qing-shu read slowly. 10,000 taels? Su Quan jumped in fright and said angrily, "When did I say I wanted to borrow so much? Girls really need to be raised in wealth. She's the sect leader's wife, and she's already making such a fuss over 10,000 taels. If I throw 100,000 taels at her, wouldn't she go limp and fall onto the bed?" The little theater in Song Qing-shu's heart began again. "But I, Song Qing-shu, always borrow at least 10,000 taels." Song Qing-shu's finger pointed at the stack of banknotes on the table. "Here, it's exactly 10,000 taels." Su Quan thought that 10,000 taels was 10,000 taels. She just borrowed it and didn't need to spend it. When she returned to Divine Dragon Island, would she be afraid that she wouldn't be able to pay for a meal? After writing, Su Quan handed the promissory note to Song Qing-shu. "Here, it's done. Where's the handprint?" Song Qing-shu glanced at it and didn't take it. "Handprint?" Su Quan was stunned and quickly reacted. Even if she hadn't eaten pork, she had seen pigs run. Signing and stamping was common sense. But where can I find the red mud now? How about Madam sacrifice yourself by cutting your finger and pressing it with blood? Song Qing-shu said cautiously. Seeing Su Quan's face suddenly darkened, he quickly waved his hand. I'm joking. I'm joking. In fact, Madam doesn't need to worry. Madam actually has red mud on her body. I do. Su Quan stared blankly. She lowered her head and looked at her whole body. Madam's red lips are as bright as fire. The color is bright and beautiful. Presumably, you're using the best rouge. There's no harm for Madam to leave a lip print on this promissory note. It can be used as a signature. Song Qing-shu said. Su Quan stared at him with a smile that was not a smile. Song Darren, are you taking liberties with this Madam? Song Mao doesn't dare. I'm just expressing my feelings. Every word is from the bottom of my heart. I absolutely don't have any obscene intention. Song Qing-shu said with a straight face. No wonder Wei Xiaobao took the initiative to seduce or to recommend himself to sleep on the bed. You can't even protect a little lady. Song Darren's mouth really knows how to make a woman happy. Su Quan glanced at Fong Yi at the side. After laughing tenderly, she picked up the promissory note and gently kissed it. A faintly discernible lip print was left on it. Fong Yi was originally extremely uncomfortable with Su Quan's words. But when she saw that Su Quan really did use a lip print as a signature, she felt disdain in her heart. Sure enough, she's an evil demon. She doesn't have the slightest sense of propriety, justice, and honor. Song Qing-shu took the promissory note and lightly sniffed the lip print. His actions were almost frivolous. A trace of coldness flashed through Su Quan's eyes. Her voice was as charming as ever. Since Song Darren likes it so much, how about this concubine give you a few more? As the saying goes, too much is as bad as not enough. One is just right. Song Qing-shu smiled and shook his head. He carefully placed the promissory note in his bosom. That gentle action made Su Quan's face slightly hot. In this short amount of time, the dishes that they had just ordered were served one after another. After the three of them had a full meal, Su Quan went to the innkeeper and asked for 2 of the best rooms. So stingy. He can't bear to give Miss Fong a room. Song Qing-shu muttered. He went straight to his room and sat cross-legged on the bed. He began to practice martial arts. Inside Su Quan's room, Fong Yi heard her deliberately lowering her voice. She jumped up in shock. What? I won't do it. Lower your voice. At this moment, Su Quan's face was dignified. She no longer had the charm she had in front of Song Qing-shu. It's not up to you. It turned out that 10,000 taels was not a small amount for Su Quan and even the entire Divine Dragon Island. In addition, Song Qing-shu did not have the awareness of being a prisoner. Moreover, Fong Yi's petty actions during the body search made Su Quan very angry. During the meal, she suddenly had a bright idea. She made Fong Yi run to the next room to serve him and take the opportunity to steal the promissory note. When Song Qing-shu found out about all this, he knew he was in the wrong and could only swallow his anger. In this way, not only did Su Quan get 10,000 taels, but she also took the opportunity to get rid of the resentment in her heart. She only lost the innocence of a subordinate, so why not? Fong Yi trembled all over. She shook her head and said, Cult Madam, I was poisoned by your leopard embryo tendon altering pill. In order to survive, I will naturally listen to your orders and do some things that go against my conscience. But if you want me to sacrifice my reputation and integrity to do that kind of shameless thing, I absolutely cannot do it. I would rather die. Seeing Fong Yi's firm attitude, Su Quan coldly smiled. I heard that your Fong family has been loyal to Mu Palace for generations, and you and Mu Palace's Xiao Junju are like sisters. If you don't want to, when we return to the Divine Dragon Island, I will let Mu, Giant Pain, serve you. That Xiao Junju is silly. I can do it with a little trick. Of course, Su Quan's voice quickly became gentle. If you agree to my request today, I naturally won't make things difficult for your Xiao Junju. Isn't sacrificing for the master the highest honor of a servant? Seeing Fong Yi's gloomy expression, Su Quan continued, Even if tonight's matter is known by the rest of you, they will only give you a thumbs up and praise you as a heroine. Who would look down on you? You? On the contrary, If you don't agree and harm Xiao Juanju's innocence, how do you think the people of Mu Palace will look at you at that time? Io, don't think so much. Su Quan's voice was unusually coquettish, but in Fang Yi's ears, it sounded like a devil's whisper. Besides, if you don't say anything about tonight's matter, if I don't say anything, who else would know? Not to mention what? Fang, he asked blankly. Not to mention the way you inadvertently looked at Song Qing-shu. I know you already have a good impression of him. Plus, Song Qing-shu is young and handsome. No matter how you look at it, this matter can't be considered a hard job, right? Su Quan said. Su Quan's words hit her sore spot. Fang, he immediately retorted sarcastically. Since Madam feels that Song Dage is young and handsome, serving him is a good thing, why don't you do it yourself? Slap. A crisp slap. Su Quan's face turned cold. Who do you think you are? You dare to say this kind of thing to me? Just now I tried to persuade you nicely, but you didn't listen, so I'm not afraid to tell you. In addition to the cult's aphrodisiac, I guarantee that when the time comes you will lose your mind and become more licentious than a prostitute. This madam will still be able to achieve my goal. Now there are two paths in front of you. One is to sober up and seduce Song Qing-shu. You can also enjoy his gentleness. The second is to let me control your soul and unconsciously offer yourself to sleep with me. You choose one. Su Quan gradually became impatient, giving her final ultimatum. Chapter 265. Well, if you say it's for the young princess, you'll feel better. Then I'll take it that you're doing it for the young princess. Su Quan sneered. Fang, he suddenly stood up, which scared Su Quan. What are you doing? I'm going to seduce Song Qing-shu and help you get the money. Fang, he said with a little sarcasm. Wait. Su Quan frowned, thinking that she was angry now, so there was no need to lower herself to her level. Looking at Song Qing-shu's situation, he doesn't look like a hungry person who can't be choosy. If you go back with this bitter face, I think it will be very difficult for a man to be interested in you. Fang, he felt a lingering fear. Her current image was indeed a little too terrible. If she abandoned her dignity to seduce Song Qing-shu, and the result was that he didn't even spare a glance at her, it would probably be more painful than losing her chastity. Madam, the hot water is here. At this time, a waiter knocked on the door. Su Quan motioned him to come in. After a while, a bucket of steaming fragrant soup was ready. Su Quan looked at Fang Yi and said, You've been traveling for a long time. Wash your body first, and I'll help you dress up later. I'm sure that even Lu Xiaohui can't control himself. Seeing Su Quan's exultant look, Fang Yi's eyes flashed with confusion. Madam, don't you want to wash? I'm not in the mood to wash now. After you go to Song Qing-shu's room, I'll enjoy it slowly. There was a trace of excitement in Su Quan's voice. She thought that she could use Fang Yi to expose Song Qing-shu's calm and proud posture. She wanted to see if he dared to be so arrogant in front of her in the future. After taking off her clothes, Fang Yi soaked her whole body in the bathtub. The warm water couldn't wash away the coldness in her heart. But this coldness didn't come from the upcoming sacrifice, but from the pity for her own fate. Fang Yi thought that the reason why her fate was at the mercy of others was entirely because of her low status. Although she called the young princess of Prince Mu's mansion a sister, in the eyes of others, she was still just a lowly servant. If Fang Yi's martial arts were high enough, she could certainly change her fate. Unfortunately, she also knew that her ability was not even third-rate in Jianghu. In addition, Fang Yi had been poisoned by the leopard embryo tendon altering pill a few days ago. She had already given up on her future. Su Quan forced her to sleep with Song Qing-shu. Fang Yi's first reaction was extreme anger. She could not accept the etiquette that she had been taught since she was young. But when she calmed down, she found a glimmer of hope for her future. If a woman wanted to change her fate, if she couldn't rely on her own ability, then she would rely on a strong man. If Wei Xiaobao had not died, Fang Yi would have realized this in the near future. Then, she would have changed her attitude and followed Wei Xiaobao wholeheartedly. Now, this powerful man had been replaced by Song Qing-shu. From Fang Yi's point of view, Song Qing-shu was highly capable, influential, and talented. She was also one of the 3 women most liked by first-class men. He was handsome and had always treated her well. Unfortunately, he treated Shuang even better. Thinking of this, Fong Yi subconsciously patted the surface of the water. "What's wrong?" Su Quan, who was outside the screen, heard the movement inside and asked curiously. "It's nothing. I'll be done soon." Fong Yi collected her thoughts and replied. When Fong Yi walked out from behind the screen, her skin was white and rosy from being soaked in hot water. Her whole body exuded a layer of mist, making her look even more beautiful than usual. "You really are a beauty." Su Quan nodded with satisfaction. "This dress fits you well, right?" "It fits, but this is Madame's dress." Although Fong Yi also thought that the dress was very beautiful, she felt uncomfortable when she thought that it was Su Quan's. "I bought this last time in Shengjing. I haven't worn it yet. It just so happens that you can use it tonight. You won't wear the dusty clothes you wore during the day, right?" Su Quan helped her tidy up the creases on the dress. At first, she was a little reluctant, but on second thought after the matter was done, she could go buy a few more beautiful dresses. In any case, the money was Song Qingshu's. It would be a waste not to spend it. "Thank you, madam," Fong Yi respectfully answered. But in her heart, she thought that whether or not she could change her future fate would depend on tonight. "Come, let me help you dress up." Su Quan pressed Fong Yi onto the chair, took out the rouge and powder, and smeared it on her face. She was originally proficient in seduction techniques, and one of the most important aspects of seduction techniques was makeup. In this aspect, Su Quan was quite confident. What are you going to say to him later? Fong Yi was deep in thought when she was suddenly awakened by Su Quan's voice. It turned out that she saw that Fong Yi was usually simple and plain and really wasn't seductive material. Su Quan didn't want to fail on the verge of success, so she temporarily decided to give her some special attention and teach her relevant experience. I don't know. Fong Yi's heart was also restless. How about this? Su Quan thought for a moment. If she used those ordinary methods, Fong Yi might not be able to learn it in a short time, so it was better to tailor a method for her. Isn't Song Qingshu and Wei Xiaobao's brother? You can use the identity of a sister-in-law to talk to him about your husband's passing. Men, this kind of disgusting creature, are full of fantasies about sisters-in-law, and so on. You could spend some effort on this. Let him feel that having you is a taboo feeling of conquest, and then you can appropriately express your affection for him. In the middle of the night, a man and a woman alone, the rest will come naturally. After Su Quan finished speaking, she saw Fong Yi staring at her with a dumbstruck expression. She couldn't help but be a little embarrassed and angry. What are you looking at? Madam, you understand men's psychology so well. No wonder Jiaozhu dotes on you so much. Fong Yi's heart was filled with disdain. Listening to Su Quan's tone, she reckoned that she was also a loose woman who had tasted her red lips in front of thousands of people. Su Quan's face was as cold as frost, thinking, what kind of man is Hong Antong? I don't have the mood to use these on him. It's a pity that Shifu is one of the 3 women that men like the most. The skills that he taught me unexpectedly became the skill of slaying a dragon. Up until now, I was only an armchair strategist. Madam, is this me? Looking at the great beauty in the mirror, Fong Yi was a little absent-minded, thinking that she could actually be this beautiful. Su Quan came back to her senses and nodded. Yes, you don't need to thank me. Although my makeup technique can maximize a woman's beauty, if you didn't have a good foundation, you wouldn't be able to achieve this effect. Seeing that Fong Yi was still looking at the mirror in surprise, Su Quan felt a burst of impatience and urged her to move quickly. You have already delayed for so long. You should go quickly, otherwise it will be troublesome when Song Qingshu completely falls asleep. Remember the method I just taught you. When Fong Yi stood at the door of Song Qingshu's room, her lips revealed a trace of a sneer. Su Quan only wanted that promissory note. With her understanding of Song Qingshu, as long as he opened his mouth, there was no need for him to recommend himself to sleep with him. However, Fong Yi didn't want to be a chess piece for the rest of her life. She wanted to change her fate. She wanted to be Song Qingshu's woman. According to the method Su Quan taught, it was indeed very easy to succeed, but in that way, she would only become a tool to vent her lust for one night, and she couldn't really be regarded by Song Qing-shu as his woman. Moreover, Fong Yi and Wei Xiaobao actually had nothing to do with each other. In this era that valued chastity, she didn't want to leave any doubts in Song Qing-shu's heart in the future. Everything would be clarified tonight, and then he could personally verify. Su Quan's method was good, but unfortunately, it was not in line with her own interests. As for seducing men, women were born with it. They didn't need to be taught. Thinking of this, Fong Yi pursed her lips, and a trace of shyness emerged in her heart. "Is Miss Fong outside?" Song Qing-shu's warm voice came. "Brother Song, it's me. Can I come in?" Once she regarded him as her future man, Fong Yi found that his voice was so magnetic. Song Qing-shu hesitated for a moment, waved his sleeves, and opened the door bolt with his internal strength. "Please come in. The door is not closed." Fong Yi pushed the door lightly, walked into the room, and naturally closed the door behind her. Noticing her little action, a trace of doubt flashed in Song Qing-shu's eyes. Seeing Song Qing-shu sitting on the bed, seemingly practicing martial arts, and looking at her with his eyes wide open, Fong Yi understood that it was a little embarrassing for a girl to come to a man's bedroom in the middle of the night, and quickly said, "Brother Song, I didn't make a sound. How did you know it was me?" With the light, Song Qing-shu found that Fong Yi was even more beautiful than usual. Now her eyes were full of spring water, and, as expected, there was a hint of coquettishness in her words. Song Qing-shu's heart skipped a beat. "Shit, is she planning to seduce me?" When my internal energy reaches a certain level, I can naturally distinguish a person's identity from his breathing. What's more, we are so familiar with each other. Of course I can tell. Song Qing-shu still had something to say. Chapter 264, The Three Women Men Love. It's just that your heart is beating much faster than usual. After seeing Brother Song's divine martial arts, I now know that those self-proclaimed masters in the Mu Palace were frogs at the bottom of a well. Fong Yi sighed. "Miss Fong doesn't need to belittle yourself." Song Qing-shu smiled and pointed to a stool on the side, indicating for her to sit down. The martial arts of the Mu Palace are more inclined to go in a battle to kill the enemy, but the martial arts of Jianghu are a completely different system. Both have their advantages and disadvantages. It's really hard to say which is better. Is the martial arts of the battlefield really that powerful? I feel that it's quite ordinary. Fong Yi obviously didn't believe it. Then let me give you an example. Song Qing-shu thought for a moment. As a citizen of the great Ming dynasty, you should have heard of the popular book Water Margin, right? I've also read it. Fong Yi's eyes lit up. "You're a girl, but you still read this kind of book?" Song Qing-shu was stunned. Fong Yi was also a little embarrassed. At that time, it was too boring in the prince's mansion, so the young princess and I found some Jianghu novels to read. Among them was this Water Margin. Song Qing-shu nodded and continued. "Let's take the Black Whirlwind Li Kuei and the Prodigal Yin Qing as a comparison. Li Kuei was born with brute strength, but at most he could be considered to have a rough understanding of martial arts. However, Yin Qing's unique skill, 18 stain drops, was well known in Jianghu. The two of them had once fought. Li Kuei had no power to resist and was thrown into confusion by Yin Qing. But later it was proven that on the battlefield, even 10 Yin Qis couldn't compare to Li Kuei's destructive power. Why is it like this?" Fong Yi exclaimed. "Martial arts of Jianghu, in short, is the skill of finding the opponent's flaws and avoiding the opponent's attacks. But this set of skills is useless on the battlefield, because at that time, the enemy has flaws everywhere, and you don't need to look for them. Moreover, there are saber lights and sword shadows everywhere. You could dodge one or even several people's attacks, but you can't dodge attacks from all directions. In this way, the straightforward, concise, and ruthless moves of the martial arts of the battlefield are more useful." This was actually the conclusion that Song Qing-shu had slowly come to after coming to this world, because he had always had doubts. If the masters of Jianghu were so undefeatable, then why was the emperor made by an ordinary person? Chapter 266. Fong, he seemed to understand something. While she was pondering, she heard Song Qingshu speak again. Miss Fong, may I know why you are looking for me so late at night? Hearing his words, Fong Yi stood up and looked at Song Qingshu's eyes. She suddenly knelt down and said, "This time Fong Yi is here to apologize to Brother Song." Fong Yi thought that since she was kneeling to her future man, it was not a humiliation. With Song Qingshu's martial arts, he should have been able to stop this action. But in his previous life, there were so many martial arts TV series that the other side would take advantage of the moment he went to help her up to plot against her. Song Qingshu could not figure out what Fong Yi was planning. Because of this hesitation, Fong Yi had already knelt on the ground. "Miss Fong, how can Song Mao afford such a big bow? Quickly get up." Song Qingshu saw that her expression was natural and did not look like she was harboring any evil intentions. He quickly went over to help her up. Unexpectedly, Fong Yi gently shook off Song Qingshu's hand and looked up at him. "If Brother Song doesn't forgive me, I won't get up." Song Qingshu felt a headache coming on. He helplessly said, "What do you want me to forgive?" Fong Yi's beautiful eyes immediately filled with tears. She choked with sobs and said, "Last time I was threatened by Madame Hong, causing Brother Song and Shuang to be poisoned. Originally, I had been numbing myself because I had no other choice but to be poisoned. But these 2 days, I really can't stand the condemnation of my conscience. I know that it was because I was greedy for life and afraid of death that I harmed Brother Song. I really can't forgive myself." Song Qingshu sighed. "Miss Fong, actually, I have never blamed you. This was the truth. The greater one's hope for a person, the greater the disappointment." Because of the original plot, Song Qingshu had never regarded Fong Yi as a pure little white flower. He also did not put her in his heart. Song Qingshu had already expected that she would do such a thing, so his heart was not disturbed. But if Shuang had done the same thing, perhaps Song Qingshu's heart would have been filled with resentment. "Brother Song, your words prove that you still haven't forgiven me." Hearing Song Qingshu's reply, Fong Yi was clearly startled. Although she didn't know if his words were true or false, in that instant, Fong Yi was so moved that she wanted to cry. All along, she had hated her own actions, worried about what Shuang, and him would think of her. She was weighed down by this heavy burden until she couldn't breathe. Who would have thought that Song Qingshu's casual words would untie the knot in her heart? However, Fong Yi remembered the purpose of her trip, so of course she wouldn't leave just like that. Song Qingshu was actually a little impatient, but looking at the tear-stained beauty in front of him, he really couldn't harden his heart. He could only say softly, "Miss Fong, how can I make you believe that I have forgiven you?" At the same time, he secretly despised himself. If Fong Yi was not a beautiful woman, he would be too lazy to talk nonsense with her. Fong Yi did not answer directly. Instead, she said, "Brother Song, I came here today because I want to tell you something else." "What is it?" Song Qingshu wanted to help her up again. "You should get up first, and then we'll talk." Fong Yi shook her head. A trace of shyness floated on her face. I want to tell Brother Song that Wei Xiaobao and I are not husband and wife." "Go. Let me make it clear that Wei Xiaobao and I are not husband and wife. It was only Wei Xiaobao who took advantage of me verbally." Finished speaking, he roughly recounted how he was injured in the imperial palace and how Wei Xiaobao took the opportunity to blackmail him. Not only did Wei Xiaobao and I not bow to heaven and earth to marry each other, we are still chaste to this day. The last sentence was as quiet as a mosquito, but with Song Qingshu's skill, he was still able to hear it clearly. Fong Yi had just finished bathing. From her slightly wide neckline, Song Qingshu could faintly see that her skin was dyed with a layer of red. Seeing that her dress was almost exposed, it seemed that he could see everything, but in fact, he couldn't see anything. Song Qingshu thought of those city beauties from his previous life and secretly praised this tailor for being a talented person. Noticing Song Qingshu's gaze, Fang Yi's heartbeat sped up a bit. Originally, she was going to pretend that she didn't know anything and let him see if he wanted to see. But she changed her mind at the last moment. Fang Yi pretended to raise her hand to brush her hair behind her ear, thus blocking Song Qingshu's gaze. Awakened by Fang Yi's action, Song Qingshu was also somewhat embarrassed. He was not that impatient to stare at a girl's chest, but he suddenly remembered his previous life and was absent-minded for a moment, causing the other party to misunderstand. He could only force a smile and said, "Miss Fang, this kind of private matter, why would you tell other men?" Because in Fang Yi's heart, Brother Song is not other men. Fang Yi raised her head. Her voice was firm. Song Qingshu was startled. For a moment, he didn't know how to respond to her. Fang Yi quietly said, "Brother Song, did you know that I came here tonight because of Madame Jiaozhu's instructions?" Song Qingshu's charming thoughts were interrupted by her words. He seemed to have understood something and asked, "What does Su Quan want to do?" Because Madame Jiaozhu is unwilling to be led by the nose by Brother Song. She wants to destroy Brother Song's spirit. In addition, she borrowed 10,000 taels of silver from Brother Song today, so she threatened me to come here. I came here to recommend myself and take the opportunity to steal the promissory note. Fang Yi lowered her head as she spoke. For a moment, her expression could not be seen clearly. "Miss Fang, weren't you poisoned by Su Quan? Why did you betray her this time and tell me everything?" Hearing that Fang Yi's task was to seduce him, and then thinking that Su Quan's method of destroying his spirit was to send a beautiful woman over, Song Qingshu didn't know whether to praise Su Quan for having big breasts or despise her for being brainless. "Because I have already deceived Brother Song once. I don't want to experience that kind of heartache a second time." Fang Yi pursed her lips, tried her best not to let herself cry. Song Qingshu kept feeling that the atmosphere was a bit strange, so he quickly laughed and said, "That woman Su Quan, if she wants to seduce someone, why doesn't she just do it herself? Why does she have to threaten and bribe a little girl like you? She is really despicable and shameless." Unexpectedly, when Fang Yi heard his words, her face turned pale and her body involuntarily trembled. Sure enough, in Brother Song's eyes, Fang Yi is just an ordinary little girl. Naturally, she can't compare to the extremely charming cult mistress. Song Qingshu didn't expect that his casual words would cause the other party to misunderstand, so he quickly explained, "How could that be? I was saying that Su Quan is really despicable. Why did you think of other things?" Seeing that Fang Yi had been kneeling there, silent, Song Qingshu had no choice but to continue. "If Miss Fang is considered ordinary, then I'm afraid there are no great beauties in the world." Although she knew that he was coaxing her, Fang Yi was still very happy. Only then did she turn her tears into a smile. "There are many women in the world who are more beautiful than me." Song Qingshu chuckled, and the room fell into silence again. Fang Yi gritted her teeth, raised her head, and said, "Brother Song, cult mistress forced me to do many things that I didn't want to do. If it was another man tonight, Fang Yi would rather die than agree to it. But when I thought it was Brother Song, Song Qingshu's heart skipped a beat. Although he knew that it was inappropriate, looking at this woman who was actually extremely proud of her heart, he still couldn't help asking, "What did you do?" I nodded and agreed. "Fang, you seem to be ready to risk everything. Since the first time I saw Brother Song, your figure has been lingering in my heart. Every time you come to the Viscount's mansion, it is the happiest time for me. I have fallen in love with you hopelessly, but I also understand that with my identity, it is destined that it is impossible between us, so I've always been suppressing this feeling. Until today, when Madame Hong forced me to come to serve you in bed, I can no longer suppress all my feelings." Song Qingshu was stunned and wanted to slap himself. He didn't mind having sex with many women, but he didn't want to fall in love with a woman. Love was the most likely thing to make people sad. A man's heart seemed strong, but true love would only be reserved for one woman. Song Qingshu thought that he was talented and could be assigned to several women, but Fang Yi was definitely not one of them. Seeing that Song Qing-shu had a complicated expression but did not say anything, Fang Yi understood that there was no way out today, so she threw caution to the wind. "Brother Song, didn't you just ask what I can do to forgive me?" Question mark. "What?" Song Qing-shu replied blankly. "Brother Song, I am willing to use my pure body to wash away the harm that I have caused to you and beg for your forgiveness," Fang Yi said with a red face. "Miss Fang, I really forgive you, and I will give you the IOU right away. You can go back and tell Su Quan that you have completed the task," Song Qing-shu said awkwardly. If Fang Yi really thought that she was someone else's wife, he didn't mind having sex with her, but she was a virgin. In ancient times where reputation was so valued, Song Qing-shu didn't want to cause endless trouble for a moment of pleasure. "Brother Song, don't you understand? I didn't come here to complete Madame Hong's task." Fang Yi sighed faintly. "Today, Fang Yi has shamelessly offered herself to sleep with you. If Brother Song refuses, I really have no face to live." While Song Qing-shu was still thinking about how to phrase his words, Fang Yi took his hand and put it into her clothes. "Big Brother Song, I don't want anything else. I just want to spend one night with you. Please don't reject me." Feeling that warm and soft touch, Song Qing-shu was about to withdraw his hand, but he raised his head and met Fang Yi's eyes. Her eyes were full of tears, as if they would fall at any time, and her eyes were full of pleading. Song Qing-shu was shocked. Fang Yi's words just now could be said to be shocking. She had already given up all her self-esteem. If he refused her tonight, he was afraid that she would really die of shame and indignation. As the saying goes, it takes a veil for a woman to chase a man, let alone a great beauty. Looking at Fang Yi's beautiful face up close and breathing in the faint fragrance of her body, Song Qing-shu had long been moved. He had only been worried about the responsibility. "Miss Fang, why are you doing this? You clearly know that I don't have any feelings for you." Song Qing-shu sighed. Fang Yi's expression darkened. She finally understood that the other had never had her in his heart. She quickly adjusted her mood. Noticing that Song Qing-shu's words were no longer a direct refusal, she quickly said, "Brother Song, it's enough that I only know that I love you. What does it matter if you love me or not? Fang, he has nothing else to ask for. If I can obtain Brother Song's pity for a night, I will have no regrets in this life." Because of the original plot, Song Qing-shu had never liked Fang Yi. But now that he saw that she had actually made such an effort, he couldn't help but be moved. He was also a little self-satisfied. Compared to Wei Xiaobao, it was naturally easier for him to win her heart. Chapter 267. Miss Fang. Song Qing-shu opened his mouth, but didn't know what to say. Fang Yi looked down at the hand on her chest and mumbled with a blush, "I've let you do this, and you still call me Miss Fang. What should I call you?" Song Qing-shu didn't have any feelings for Fang Yi and couldn't bring himself to call her more affectionately. "Or, you can call me sister-in-law like before." Fang Yi raised her head, a sly smile appearing in the depths of her eyes. "I can't do that." Song Qing-shu waved his hand awkwardly. "Why not?" Fang Yi slowly got up and said seductively while biting her lips. Song Qing-shu was struggling with the eternal dilemma of whether to be a beast or to be inferior to a beast. Seeing her body slowly coming closer, he stretched out his hand subconsciously to block her, but he didn't expect to press on a soft spot. Fang Yi was annoyed. She started to doubt whether Song Qing-shu was a man or not. She had done so much for him, but he was still making excuses. Fang Yi understood that there was no way out. She didn't hide, but stepped forward to meet him. Song Qing-shu awkwardly leaned back. Unfortunately, he was sitting on the bed, and when he leaned back to a certain extent, he collapsed. Fang Yi also fell into his arms and said hesitantly, "I hope First Uncle will take pity on me." In the middle of the night, a fragrant beauty fell into his arms. Song Qing-shu's remaining reason was completely destroyed by this charming uncle. He felt that his whole body was as hard as iron. The blissful Zen is about letting nature take its course. I'll just treat it as a practice. Song Qing-shu found a dignified reason for himself and stopped hesitating. Song Qing-shu lifted his leg and clamped onto Fong Yi's delicate body. Then, using the strength of his waist and abdomen, he twisted and repositioned Fong Yi beneath him. Seeing Song Qing-shu finally moved, Fong Yi was both relieved and frightened. After all, this was the most important moment for a girl. "Sister-in-law, you're so beautiful." Looking at the exceptionally beautiful face illuminated by the fire, Song Qing-shu couldn't help but kiss it. Hearing him call her sister-in-law, Fong Yi's body, which had been stiff from nervousness, immediately softened. "Brother Song, you really—" Fong Yi immediately stopped talking. She was worried that if she ruined the atmosphere, all her previous efforts would be wasted. "I like these role-playing games." Song Qing-shu wantonly kissed Fong Yi's neck, which was flushed due to nervousness, and said as he breathed out. Being sprayed by Song Qing-shu's masculine breath, Fong Yi's eyes also flashed with a trace of intoxication. She opened her mouth slightly and said intermittently, "Eldest uncle, whatever you want. Sister-in-law will do." She still felt some regret in her heart. She didn't expect that in the end. She still had to use Su Quan's method. Song Qing-shu did not expect Fong Yi, who was usually cold and arrogant, to be so passionate. Song Qing-shu could feel the nervousness in her heart, but she still plucked up the courage to flatter him with all kinds of jerky movements. After a delicate cry, Song Qing-shu extended his hand to wipe away the tears at the corner of Fong Yi's eyes. His movements also became gentle, as he enjoyed the tight squeeze while refining the unending stream of pure yin qi. Song Qing-shu couldn't help but have some suspicions. Why did all the women who had skin contact with him have such dense, pure yin qi? It was not as rare as described in the Joyous Diana. Could it be that these women were all chivalrous women, so their quality was generally high? In fact, this was just a misunderstanding of Song Qing-shu's. Women who were so beautiful would definitely have an outstanding appearance. Coincidentally, Song Qing-shu's taste was quite high, so he only looked for beautiful women. Their bodies would definitely have rich, pure yin qi, which was why Song Qing-shu found that he could achieve twice the results with half the effort when practicing the joyous meditation. The bed swayed, the fragrant skin slightly sweating. The pleasures of the boudoir were not to be known to outsiders. After the clouds dissipated and the rain stopped, Fong Yi sighed softly. "For the past 10 years, I have experienced all kinds of suffering in the world. I originally thought that life was meaningless. But now I know that there is such a happy thing in the world. Just this matter alone made my life worthwhile. After hearing your words, I feel a ball of fire burning in my lower abdomen. Do you want me to let you be happy again?" Song Qing-shu hooked her chin and laughed rather wantonly. "Just now? Brother Song, do you think I'm a woman?" Fong Yi's small mouth twitched. Her expression was rather nervous. She did not have any experience in seducing men and was worried that Song Qing-shu would reject her, so her actions were inevitably a little overboard. Moreover, in order to please Song Qing-shu, Fong Yi could be said to be really obedient. No matter what Song Qing-shu asked her to do, she was like a kitten, obedient to him and satisfied him. Even if Song Qing-shu asked her to play forbidden love, make her do all kinds of embarrassing positions, make her use her mouth, now that Fong Yi had regained her rationality, she was actually quite regretful. Although no one taught her, she also knew that only the appropriate rejection could keep a man in suspense. Just now, she let him enjoy all the sweetness in one go. Fong Yi was worried that Song Qing-shu would look down on her afterwards, and, secondly, she was worried that he would get tired of playing with her. How can that be? Men like women like you the most in bed. Besides, I was the one who forced you to do it just now. Thinking of the scene just now, Song Qing-shu felt that his body was a little out of control and his hands began to fiddle around. Fong Yi noticed the change in Song Qing-shu from the corner of her eyes. She was already quite tired, but she still forced herself to be alert. "Brother Song, do you want it again?" Although Song Qing-shu knew that it was really not a good time to criticize her, he felt that he was somewhat unable to control himself. He was also secretly shocked. Ever since he started practicing the mandala, he seemed to like to have sex twice. The first time was mainly to absorb chi, and the second time was naturally like a dragon and a tiger. Song Qing-shu was originally still hesitating, but who knew that Fong Yi would entangle him like an octopus? Song Qing-shu was stunned for a moment before he was overjoyed. He lowered his waist and pressed on her. Feeling his movements, Fong Yi's delicate eyebrows slightly furrowed, but she still used the gentleness and tolerance unique to women to neutralize the other's attack. "Brother Song, have you ever done this with Shuang before?" Fong Yi suddenly asked. Song Qing-shu paused and said rather awkwardly, "Why do you suddenly ask this?" The two of them were now in the most intimate position, so Fong Yi could naturally feel every subtle change in Song Qing-shu's body. She sighed. "Seems like I have." "Don't talk nonsense," Song Qing-shu hurriedly said. He did not want to betray Shuang and cause her to be unable to face others in the future. "Brother Song, I can feel it. Why do you have to lie to me?" "I don't mind." Fong Yi smiled sweetly. "I'm just thinking that right now, I can barely open my eyes, but you're still like a raging bull. If you're like this every day, I'm afraid I won't have the good fortune to enjoy it alone. If only Shuang was by my side to help me right now, I wouldn't have to be bullied by you all the time." It's my fault. I didn't notice your feelings." Song Qing-shu hurriedly apologized. His movements also immediately became gentle. In his heart, he did not love Fong Yi only. Thus, just now, he had unconsciously moved without any pity, only seeking to maximize his own happiness. Fong Yi stretched out a finger and pressed it to his lips. She shook her head and said, "Brother Song, this time you don't have to worry. I can endure one night occasionally. But in the future, you'll have to ask Sister Shuang to help me." Fong Yi still remembered that she had just said that she only wanted one night of pleasure. Now that she had calmly mentioned it in the future, she was worried that Song Qing-shu would refuse. Thus, she thought of pulling Shuang into the same boat. Sure enough, Song Qing-shu did not see through her little scheme. He said, "What are you talking about? If Shuang hears you, she'll definitely be angry." "Brother Song, although you can lie to me with your mouth, you can't lie to me with your body." Fong Yi giggled. Then, her face suddenly turned red. She said rather bashfully, "Just now, when you heard my suggestion, that place obviously grew a bit bigger, and it even jumped a few times." "No way." Song Qing-shu's thoughts were seen through by her. He angrily moved a few times out of humiliation. Fong Yi let out a delicate cry and hurriedly begged for mercy. Brother Song, I was wrong." "Then how are you going to admit your mistake?" It was originally a rather normal sentence, but in bed, it was so seductive. Fong Yi hooked her arms around Song Qing-shu's neck and whispered in his ear, "Brother Song, it seems that you haven't succeeded with Shuang yet. If you want, I can help you get what you want." Hearing this, Song Qing-shu's heart skipped a beat. Although he had already conquered Shuang he was still looking forward to how Fong Yi, the second branch, would help him deal with Shuang the first branch. His voice was a bit hoarse. "How are you going to help me?" "You don't need to worry about that." Fong Yi was delighted. With this relationship, she naturally wouldn't worry that Song Qing-shu would throw her away after using her tonight. When the time comes, you can go home with the beauty. Hearing this, Song Qing-shu's mind swayed. He bit her earlobe and said in a muffled voice, "You little rascal, you're helping another man steal your mistress." "Brother Song," Fong Yi looked at him reproachfully. "I have nothing to do with Wei Xiaobao. I just proved my innocence to you, and you still say that." Song Qing-shu could hear that she wasn't really angry. He caressed and coaxed her to make her smile. "Brother Song, let me tell you a secret. Not only me, but Wei Xiaobao also hasn't touched Shuang and the young princess." "How do you know?" Song Qing-shu thought that he had already personally verified Shuang and Fong Yi. Speaking of which, he felt somewhat sorry for Wei Xiaobao. "I just know." Fong Yi smiled slyly. Except for that Princess Janning who doesn't know how to love herself and may have fooled around with him. Chill. If this gets out, you'll be beheaded. Hearing her mention Janning and Wei Xiaobao, a trace of unnaturalness flashed across Song Qingshu's face. All right, let's not talk about them. Fang Yi smiled. But right now, I still have something to worry about. What are you worried about? Song Qingshu asked. Chapter 268. It's not good for us to talk about Shuang behind her back. Song Qingshu was worried that he might accidentally expose his relationship with Shuang under the influence of his charm. Then let's not talk about Shuang Fang Yi blushed. Right now, she only had her body's instinctive reaction. She really didn't have the mind to think about anything else. After a shiver from the bottom of her soul, Fang Yi felt a little cold. She curled up and leaned into Song Qingshu's arms. Song Qingshu hesitated for a moment, but still reached out and hugged her tightly. Miss Fang, how are you going to reply to Su Quan? Song Qingshu's fingers slid across the skin of her arm and asked curiously. You still call me Miss Fang? Fang Yi pushed him angrily. How about I call you sister-in-law? Song Qingshu asked tentatively. Fang Yi's whole body shivered. She shook her head and said, I didn't feel anything before, but now it sounds a little too perverted. Do women also have a sage's time? Song Qingshu touched his nose. Seeing that the other party didn't understand, he quickly said, in the future, in front of others, I'll call you Miss Fang. In private, I'll call you Fang Yi felt a trace of joy in her heart. She finally felt closer to him. Before she could say anything, Song Qingshu's next sentence made her body go limp. If we're in bed, I'll call you sister-in-law, okay? Although she felt that these words were very shameless, Fang Yi's heart still swayed when she heard them. She really couldn't bring up the feeling of disgust. She nodded slightly. Brother Song, do what you want. Later you can take this promissory note to Su Quan. Song Qingshu took out the promissory note from under his pillow and stuffed it into Fang Yi's arms. Unexpectedly, Fang Yi didn't want to take it. She bit her lip and said no. Why? Song Qingshu asked curiously. This feels like I'm selling myself. I don't like it. Fang Yi lowered her head, her eyelashes trembling. Ear, what are you thinking? Besides, if you can really sell for 10,000 taels of silver in one night, you'll be the envy of all the women in the world. Even a most popular courtesan in Qinhuai River doesn't cost 10,000 taels of silver a night. As he spoke, Song Qingshu suddenly thought of the scene of him visiting Xia Qingqing in Yangzhou's lovely spring brothel. He couldn't help but be startled. I knew it. In Big Brother Song's eyes, I'm no different from those prostitutes. Fang Yi faintly sighed. She sat up from the bed and began to put on her clothes. Aunt Fang. Yeah, I'm sorry. I usually talk nonsense and joke around. Please don't take it to heart. If I had such a thought in my heart, I guarantee that I would be struck by lightning. Song Qingshu rarely swore, but this time he really felt wronged. However, before he could finish his sentence, Fang Yi's finger had already pressed against his lips. A strange look flashed through Fang Yi's eyes. Brother Song, are you apologizing to me? Yes. Song Qingshu grabbed her hand. Don't be angry at me, okay? In my entire life, no one has ever apologized to me so sincerely. Fang Yi was absent-minded. She grew up in the Mu Palace. When she was conscious, she knew that she was a servant of the Mu family. In the palace, if it wasn't the masters, then it was the elders like her Shifu. Normally, they would be slightly amiable, but Fang Yi would be somewhat flattered. Since childhood, the young princess had treated her like an older sister. Therefore, although Fang Yi had resentment in her heart because of her lowly background, she was still sincere toward the young princess. However, except for Mu Jian Pain, Fang Yi was on guard and scheming against everyone else. Tonight, Fang Yi had always been worried that Song Qingshu would treat her as a plaything. He would come and go at his beck and call. She had already devised many methods to slowly hook the other's heart in the future. But until now, Song Qingshu was very sincere and pitiful toward her, except when he did that kind of thing. This made Fang Yi's closed heart, which had always lacked love, shine a few rays of sunshine. Are you still not willing to forgive me? Although Song Qing-shu didn't love Fong Yi, he couldn't bear to see a woman being wronged. Moreover, the main culprit was himself. The one who should ask for forgiveness is me. Fong Yi suddenly knelt in front of Song Qing-shu. Song Qing-shu stared blankly for a moment. When he realized that she was referring to the previous poisoning incident, he couldn't help but laugh. Didn't I say that I never blamed you? Do you want me to also make a poison oath? No, or just want to hear Song Qing-shu personally say the 3 words forgive me. Although Fong Yi could feel that what he said was true, she still nervously looked at Song Qing-shu. All right, I forgive you. Song Qing-shu had to forgive her in her own way. Seeing Fong Yi obviously let out a sigh of relief, he quickly reached out to help her up. In the future, if you want to talk, just talk. Why do you have to kneel so often? Fong Yi was relieved and said happily, Big brother, you are my man. It's natural for me to kneel to you. It doesn't matter. Song Qing-shu treated her as an equal, which made Fong Yi suddenly waver. Originally, she came with a scheme, but now she suddenly felt that even if she couldn't get any power or status, it didn't matter if she was his woman. As a modern person, Song Qing-shu was not used to this ancient ritual of kneeling, but after hearing Fong Yi's words, his heart suddenly swelled with comfort, and he no longer forced it. It seems that I am still a male chauvinist. Since you already believe that I have no other intention, then you can take this IOU. Song Qing-shu grabbed her forearm and stuffed the IOU into her hand. So easily give her 10,000 taels? Fong Yi said indignantly, thinking that she sacrificed her chastity. Although now she was willing, Su Quan could get 10,000 taels just by talking. Fong Yi felt suffocated in her chest. What? You've become a mistress of the house so quickly, feeling heartache for my money. Song Qing-shu joked, but Fong Yi's expression changed greatly, and she hurriedly explained, Chapter 267, Reverse Plot. Fong Yi's status is low. She doesn't dare to have delusions of becoming Big Brother's wife. In his previous life, this was the most common joke between lovers. Seeing Fong Yi's fearful expression, Song Qing-shu instantly felt it was dull. But then he thought Fong Yi had grown up in the Wang Fu, and the concept of seniority was deeply ingrained. It wasn't her fault. Hugging Fong Yi, he said gently, The relationship between you and me is already so close. I just said it casually. Why do you need to guess the meaning behind it? I'm not so complicated. Fong Yi also felt that she was too frightened and said with shame, Song Dage's lecture is correct. Fine, it's a waste of words, Song Qing-shu said with a bitter smile. If you can't complete the mission, how will you explain it when you return? I'll just say that Song Dage is a gentleman, the reincarnation of Lu Xiahui. Naturally, I didn't succeed. Fong Yi had already thought it through. Su Quan's threat was only to use Mu Jianpain to complete this seduction plan in the future. But since Fong Yi had already become Song Qing-shu's woman, she naturally hoped that Mu Jianpain would also become one. After all, Fong Yi was still Mu Jianpain's Tongfang maiden name. Whoever Mu Jianpain married, she could only marry. The etiquette of the secular world wasn't so easily shaken. If Su Quan didn't know, it was very likely that she would use all kinds of methods to get Mu Jianpain to seduce Song Qing-shu. Thinking of this, Fong Yi's eyes brightened, and she had an idea in her heart. Song Dage, promise me, in the future in front of Su Quan, you must pretend that nothing happened tonight. Finishing, she shoved the promissory note back. Why? Noticing her suddenly excited expression, Song Qing-shu was confused. Oh, don't ask. Anyway, I won't harm you. Fong Yi thought in her heart, I'm sorry, little princess. For the future happiness, I can only use you. But Song Dage is a good man, much better than that way, Xiao Bao. You definitely won't blame me in the future. But you have been in my room for so long, Su Quan won't be so stupid to believe that we are chatting, right? Song Qing-shu spread out his hands and said helplessly, although she suspects it, she has no evidence. As long as we are unified, she can't do anything even if she doesn't believe it. During this time, Fong Yi had suffered a lot from Su Quan. Naturally, she wouldn't let go of the opportunity to set her up. By the way, Song Dage, have you thought of how to detoxify the poison of the leopard embryo tendon-changing pill? Fong Yi suddenly remembered that the two of them were poisoned, and her expression suddenly became gloomy. Isn't there still a year before the poison takes effect? Besides, we're going to Divine Dragon Island soon. There will always be a chance to find the antidote. Song Qing-shu originally wanted to say that he had some clues, but he thought that if the Poison Hand King of Medicine failed to concoct the antidote, she would be happy for nothing. It was better to talk about it after it was done. Song Dage's realm of treating life and death as nothing. I really can't reach it. Fong Yi looked at Song Qing-shu with admiration. Don't worry. I will definitely find the antidote before the poison takes effect. Song Qing-shu was worried that if he didn't pacify her, Fong Yi, because of the antidote, would betray Wei Xiaobao like in the original work. He wasn't as magnanimous as Wei Xiaobao. The two of them just wantonly and affectionate. Song Qing-shu naturally didn't want this kind of ending. Song Dage, previously when I thought of Fat Tuchuo and Thin Tuchuo's appearance, I was afraid of the leopard embryo tendon-changing pill. But I don't know why. But now I'm not afraid at all, because I know that no matter what, Big Brother will be with me. Fong, he said shyly. What you want to say is, if worst comes to worst, we could be a pair of lovebirds that share the same fate. Song Qing-shu laughed heartily. Since Fong, he had already gotten over it, then there would be one less unknown factor in the future. To be able to live and die together with Song Dage, Fong, he has no regrets in this life. Now Fong, he didn't know whether she was acting or revealing her true feelings when she said these words. What? Song Qing-shu is unmoved? Seeing Fong Yi walk into the room, neatly dressed, Su Quan felt that something was wrong. Hearing her report, it was indeed as she expected. Song Dage said, a friend's wife must not be deceived. He is a gentleman who does not become unmoved. Fong Yi's heart was filled with bashfulness. That man was not someone who did not become unmoved. Is it really like this? Su Quan's eyes flashed with a trace of suspicion. If Madam doesn't believe me, Fong Yi can take off my clothes and let Madam check. Fong Yi raised her hand, looking like she was asking her to do as she pleased. Forget it, I don't have that kind of hobby. Su Quan waved her hand in disgust, frowned, and said to herself, is Song Qing-shu a man or not? In the middle of the night, he doesn't even want such a beautiful woman who sent herself to his door. Chapter 269. How dare you? You dare to make a joke about Ben Furen. Su Quan suddenly pulled a long face. Furen, don't misunderstand. Although Fong Yi had gotten close to Song Qing-shu, Su Quan's long-standing prestige was still there. So she quickly explained, what I mean is that with Furen's means, you don't really need to let Song Qing-shu take advantage of you to achieve your goal. Shunlong Jiao's followers privately said that Su Quan was like the fox spirit in the strange stories, that she knew magic. Fong Yi was dubious about this, so she took the opportunity to test her. This is also a way. Su Quan nodded. In fact, she had thought of doing it herself at first, but she was worried that Song Qing-shu's martial arts were too high. If she didn't control the heat well, she wouldn't even be able to resist when he used force, so she hesitated. Fong Yi was shocked and secretly thought that she had to find a chance to remind Song Qing-shu so that he wouldn't fall in her trap. Are you sure that Song Qing-shu has been seduced by you to the point that he can't control himself? Su Quan thought about it and decided to confirm it again. Fong Yi pretended to nod shyly, but in her heart, she was thinking, more than can't control himself. Well, I'll let you see Ben Furen's power. Su Quan snorted. A trace of confidence appeared on her face, and as soon as she finished speaking, she walked out. Furen, do you plan to go now? Fong Yi secretly complained. On one hand, she was worried that Su Quan would see the messy battlefield, and, on the other hand, she didn't have time to remind Song Qing-shu. If he was unprepared and fell into Su Quan's trap, then it would be over. Is there a problem? Su Quan suspiciously stared at her. With your foreshadowing, the rest of the matter is simply a piece of cake for Ben Furen. Su Quan was very confident in her skills. For many years, except for some old followers, there wasn't a man who wasn't played by her in the palm of her hand. No problem. I wish Foreign success. Fong Yi quickly replied. Strange, after you came back, there was something wrong. Su Quan frowned. She couldn't think of a reason. Although she had a bad premonition, this was a rare opportunity. Su Quan really didn't want to give up. Watching Su Quan's figure disappear at the door, Fong Yi muttered to herself, Brother Song, I hope you're really a gentleman. Even if you're not, just now, after doing that twice, you should be out of energy by now. While Fong Yi was worrying about her gains and losses, Su Quan had already gently knocked on Song Qingshu's door. Song Qingshu, who was refining his true qi, opened his eyes, and a trace of doubt flashed through his eyes. Why did Fong Yi come back so soon? Lord Song, are you asleep? Suddenly, a sweet female voice came from outside the door. Hearing this, Song Qingshu trembled. Fortunately, his surname wasn't Shiman. He quickly got up and opened the door. Looking at the beautiful woman standing at the door, he couldn't help but wryly smiled. Why did Foreign come to look for Song Mao so late at night? Seeing Song Qingshu open the door so quickly, Su Quan was happy in her heart. Since he chose to open the door, it seems his heart must be somewhat restless. But she didn't know that Song Qingshu, as a modern man, didn't have any barrier between men and women. In ancient times, a woman coming to look for him in the middle of the night was a taboo, but for Song Qingshu, it was normal. Outside? It's cold outside, Lord Song. Don't you want to invite me in to sit? Su Quan said as she crossed her arms. Her delicate body shivered without a trace, as if she was a delicate young lady in her boudoir. Could it be that Fong Yi has been exposed? Song Qingshu secretly thought. But looking at her, it doesn't seem like it. What are you saying, madam? Please come in. Song Qingshu stepped aside and welcomed her in. After entering the room, Su Quan seemed to have returned to her own room. Looking here and there, she was completely not as cautious as Fong Yi. Seeing Song Qingshu's puzzled expression, she sweetly smiled, revealing a faintly discernible dimple at the corner of her lips. I came over to see what the stone-hearted Lord Song is doing by himself. He actually has the heart to reject the beautiful Miss Fong. The dimple at the corner of Su Quan's lips was very shallow. Only when she smiled would it reveal a trace, and it was only on the left side. If the two of them weren't so close, it would be very difficult for Song Qingshu to discover it. Suddenly hearing Su Quan's words, Song Qingshu was stunned for a moment before he reacted. You sent Miss Fong over? I was worried that you wouldn't be able to sleep alone. Seeing that Miss Fong's appearance and figure are both first-rate, I sent her over to serve Lord Song. Who would have thought that you would be so heartless? You don't know how heartbroken Miss Fong was when she returned to her room. Su Quan clicked her tongue and sighed as if she was criticizing a heartless man. Song Qingshu secretly praised Fong Yi's good acting skills, but his expression was still very innocent. Foreign, aren't you harming me? Miss Fong is a married woman. Isn't this better? Lord Song won't take responsibility for the problem of her chastity. Besides, her husband is already dead. Su Quan looked at him with a smile that was not a smile. What a coincidence, comrade! Hearing this, Song Qingshu was secretly happy and instinctively replied, Isn't Foreign also a married woman? Su Quan didn't expect to invite trouble for herself. Her cheeks blushed, and she smiled tenderly. Lord Song is really courageous. You even dare to take advantage of this Foreign. Since cult leader Hong doesn't want to take advantage of such a white and tender tofu, this one is naturally willing to do my best. Song Qingshu's words had a double meaning. Hearing this, Su Quan's heart swayed, but she wasn't angry. Seeing that Song Qingshu was flirting with her many times, she instead became a little more excited. It turned out that this technique of hers wasn't omnipotent. Before casting the technique, she first needed to seduce the other party's mind and soul, and then take advantage of the moment when the other party's mind revealed a trace of a gap. She would then take advantage of the gap and use the technique to control the other party. Su Quan smiled coquettishly and spun around a few times. She took the opportunity to keep a distance from Song Qingshu. I came here today not only to defend Miss Fong's injustice, but also to ask you something. Foreign, please ask. This one will definitely tell you everything I know. As Song Qingshu smiled, he added as if in his heart. Suquan didn't answer immediately. Instead, she casually picked up the teacup on the table and poured a cup of water. She brought it to her mouth and took a small sip. Her rosy lips and a white teacup formed a strong visual impact. Song Qingshu's mouth and tongue were a little parched. His heart was already in turmoil. My goodness, in psychology, this should be called sexual innuendo. Looks like the technique of seduction is indeed a science. Hey, seductress, what other tricks do you have? Do not hesitate to use them. The slight movement of Song Qingshu's throat couldn't escape Su Quan's eyes. She was very satisfied with Song Qingshu's current reaction. She paced around the room in small steps, as if there was something difficult to say. Earlier, Lord Song mentioned that cult leader's kung fu needs a preceptor. Halfway through her sentence, Su Quan blushed and was unwilling to speak anymore. It's just a few words. Is there need to lean on my bed shyly? And the topic is so suggestive. Song Qingshu couldn't help but criticize. If he didn't know how powerful Su Quan was in the original work, he was afraid that he would have been deceived by her Oscar-winning performance. This kind of thing, as the person involved, madam, you should be the clearest about it. Song Qingshu didn't directly answer. Instead, he smiled at her maliciously. I've already given you such an obvious hint. Why don't you take the initiative? Su Quan was secretly angry. She saw that Song Qingshu was not like other men and seemed to be so easy to deal with. Fine, if I don't tame you into a loyal dog under my skirt, I, Su Quan, will change my surname to yours. Su Quan's fighting spirit was ignited. What she needed was the moment when Song Qingshu's mind was lost, so she continued to tease Song Qingshu. I'm a girl. How can I say this kind of thing? I just want to ask if Lord Song has any solution. Cult leader's wife, I have a poem here. It should be helpful for your situation, Song Qingshu answered. Oh, I didn't know that Lord Song is not only skilled in martial arts, but also knows how to recite poems. You are indeed skilled in both the pen and the sword. A trace of surprise appeared in Su Quan's beautiful eyes. It should be known that there weren't many people in Jianghu who understood poetry, not to mention a high-level skill like reciting poems. What's so difficult about reciting poems? What I'm best at is making the quilt wet. Song Qingshu told a cold joke from his previous life. Seeing Su Quan's confused expression, he couldn't help but feel a little bored. He continued to say, Madam, listen carefully. This lady has an acre of land that has been left uncultivated for 18 years. If we don't have enough to eat at home, we can go to other families to freeload. Su Quan's face suddenly became very interesting. One moment it was red, the next moment it was green, but it wasn't good for her to flare up. She could only smile awkwardly. I really overestimated Lord Song. Lord Song's masterpiece doesn't rhyme at all. It's hard to say that it's a limerick. Who knew that Song Qingshu didn't care at all? He shook his head and said with a smile, Rhyme is just a small trick of the literati. Madam, what do you think of this poem again? After saying that, he didn't wait for Su Quan to respond. He continued, The sun rises and shines brilliantly. Thousands of mountains and rivers are like fire. In an instant, the sun rises to the sky, chasing away the stars and chasing away the moon. Su Quan originally wanted to take the opportunity to praise him, but after being teased by him just now, she really couldn't take it anymore. She thought that this poem was written by Song Qingshu, so she directly expressed her feelings. Her tone was rather sarcastic. The words are vulgar, and it doesn't rhyme at all. It can't be considered a good poem. Song Qingshu looked at Su Quan with a strange expression. He had an expression that said, I knew you would say that. This poem was written by the Northern Song Dynasty's founding emperor, Zhao Kuangyin. From a poetic point of view, it's indeed not very good. But what I value more is the atmosphere revealed between the lines. So rhyme and flowery words are just small tricks. The meaning expressed by the poem itself is what's more precious. Su Quan was secretly shocked. Song Qingshu actually compared himself to the emperor. It seemed that he was destined to be someone extraordinary, Song Qing didn't know that his casual words would make the superstitious ancient people think so much. Seeing Su Quan's blank expression, he opened his mouth and said with a smile, "Now, what do you think of my poem just now, madam? I think it's vivid and appropriate." Su Quan suppressed her anger and leaned towards Song Qing. She smiled tenderly and said, "Why? Lord Song is considerate of me. Are you planning to let me freeload some food?" Chapter 270. A strange light flashed in Song Qingshu's eyes, and then he became somewhat dazed. "Beautiful. Madam is the most beautiful woman I've ever seen." Su Quan was very satisfied with his answer. She continued to stare into his eyes and said with a smile, "Is that so? I heard that Song Qingshu's wife, Zhou Zhuruo, is also a world-famous beauty. Am I more beautiful than her?" As Song Qingshu's reputation grew, many people in the world had specially investigated his past. It was not strange to know that he had a relationship with Zhou Zhuruo. A trace of pain appeared on Song Qingshu's face. "She is indeed beautiful, but I don't like her. On the other hand, Madam's beauty is not inferior to hers. In terms of charm, she is far inferior. Your little mouth is really sweet. You're still so good at talking even after being drugged by me." Su Quan was successful. She knew that Song Qingshu was completely under her control and immediately relaxed. "Then do you like me?" Su Quan's tone was very strange. It was a few ordinary words, but when they came out of her mouth, they were especially soft. "I like you. Of course I like you." Song Qingshu hurriedly replied, as if he was worried that hesitating would cause the beauty to be unhappy. "How much do you like me?" Looking at the somewhat wooden man in front of her, Su Quan enjoyed the feeling of being in control of the situation. She was mischievous and began to tease him. "How much do I like you?" Obviously, this question was a bit too complicated for the current Song Qingshu. He thought for a moment and hesitated. "I like you very much." Seeing Song Qingshu, who was usually smart and calm, become this silly boy in front of her, Su Quan felt a trace of satisfaction from revenge. She said in a rather spoiled tone, "Then, will you give your money to me to use?" "Of course. My money is your money." Song Qingshu replied matter-of-factly. Su Quan was so happy that her eyes narrowed. "But I borrowed 10,000 taels of silver from you during the day." Song Qingshu scratched his head and pondered for a moment. Suddenly, he came to a realization and handed it to Su Quan. "I don't know why I asked you for the promissory note at that time. Now that I think about it, it's simply unforgivable. I hope you can forgive me." Su Quan glanced at it. Sure enough, it was something that she had personally signed. She carefully put it into her bosom and said with a sweet smile, "You gave me such an important thing. I'm very happy now. Do you have any wishes? Tell me. Maybe I'll be happy and help you fulfill your dreams." Song Qingshu's eyes brightened, but they quickly dimmed again. "But I don't dare to say it." "Why wouldn't I dare? Tell me. As long as I can do it, I will help you." Although she hadn't interacted much with Song Qingshu, Su Quan already knew that he was a very shrewd person. Therefore, she was very curious as to what kind of shocking secret would a person like Song Qingshu reveal when he was in a state of confusion. Really, Song Qingshu opened his mouth, but when he glanced at Su Quan, he swallowed his words back. "Of course it's true." Su Quan looked at Song Qingshu with a sweet smile, showing him an encouraging look. But when she heard Song Qingshu's reply, after hearing Song Qingshu's reply, she could no longer smile. "I want F***CKU." Song Qingshu's eyes were suddenly filled with desire. Su Quan jumped in fright. She knew that the person who was bewitched by her said what he really thought. Hearing such vulgar words, Su Quan was angry, but at the same time, her body also produced an inexplicable feeling. For many years, because Hong Yantong was cultivating internal energy, he couldn't get close to women, so he always felt guilty towards her. Therefore, he treated her like a treasure, holding her in his hands, afraid that she would break, holding her in his mouth, afraid that she would melt. He never said a harsh word, not to mention this kind of vulgar slang. The rest of the people in the Divine Dragon sect were even more afraid of her. How would they dare to say such words? Seeing the inexplicable look in Song Qingshu's eyes, Su Quan quickly calmed down. Her main role was to guide the other's thoughts and actions, but she couldn't completely control the other. If Song Qingshu really suddenly did something to her, with the difference in their martial strength, Su Quan was afraid that she wouldn't be able to resist, so she hurriedly replied, "Good little brother, why do you have such thoughts? But big sister also likes you very much, and is willing to let little brother F***CK." After saying that, Su Quan's face turned red. Even she herself didn't know if it was fake or because she was embarrassed. Really? Song Qingshu looked at her in surprise and quickly opened his arms to embrace Su Quan, opening his mouth to the side of her neck. Su Quan dodged while trying her best to urge, "But big sister has something important to do now. I can't give it to you. What is more important than me?" Song Qingshu mumbled discontentedly. Su Quan had never been so close to a man. Being tightly held in Song Qingshu's arms, Su Quan's voice also trembled a little. Big sister's house has a lot of bad people. Not only want to seize big sister's family property, but also want to take big sister back. F***CK. Su Quan felt that she was a little crazy. Originally, she was going to say take back to be his wife. Why did she suddenly change it at the last minute? Preposterous. This is simply preposterous. Song Qingshu seemed to be greatly provoked and said loudly, "Who is so bold? Big sister, tell me. I'll go kill them all." Su Quan was delighted. With a supermaster like Song Qingshu as a fighter, things would be much easier later. Big sister is going home soon. Will you protect big sister? Of course, I will definitely not let other people hurt big sister. Song Qingshu nodded affirmatively. Su Quan took the opportunity to break away from his arms, looked at his disappointed expression, and couldn't help but feel pain in her heart. Big sister promises you, after you help big sister drive away the bad people, big sister can let you. What? Song Qingshu asked stupidly. Annoying. If Su Quan didn't know that his brain was not very bright now, she would definitely think that he was deliberately playing with her. Just like what you said just now. Oh, Song Qingshu suddenly understood. Let me F***CK. Don't say it. Su Quan glared at him angrily. Also, when we go home, you have to listen to all my orders. Why? Song Qingshu muttered discontentedly. Those bad people want to take advantage of big sister. They all deserve to die. Not all the guests are bad. Some people can show benefits, divide, and rope them in. Seeing Song Qingshu's blank expression, Su Quan didn't know why, but she felt a burst of annoyance in her heart and muttered to herself, "You are usually so smart. You definitely understand what I mean. Although I don't really understand, in the future, whatever big sister wants me to do, I will do it." Song Qingshu scratched his head, and his smile was particularly simple. Su Quan sighed. How good it would be if people who were hit by her could retain their usual wisdom, and at the same time listen to her. But she knew that this was just a thought. If Song Qingshu returned to his usual shrewdness, she dared not be at ease. Little brother is still the best to me. Su Quan couldn't help but pinch Song Qingshu's cheeks, feeling that his skin was smoother than the average girl's. It was simply unreasonable. Good big sister, I want to kiss you. Smelling the fragrance on Su Quan's body, Song Qingshu was clearly somewhat restless. I have to help him get rid of the fire first, otherwise it will be too dangerous for him to pester me all day long. Su Quan's qigong was called soaring, swallow soaring. Although it couldn't compare to the famous Jianghu's wave-like subtle steps, lightning changes, and so on, it still had its own unique dodging skills. Song Qingshu's mind wasn't too clear at the moment, and he couldn't use his full strength, so when Su Quan was on guard, it was easy for her to dodge. Little brother, be good. Big sister will find a beauty to be your wife first. Su Quan didn't think that Song Qingshu looked like a gentleman on the surface, but in the end, he fell into her trap. Without reason and moral restraint, he actually became so eager for sex. It seemed that he was a pervert in his bones. But soon, Su Quan was worried about personal gains and losses again. Song Qingshu's current martial arts had been greatly reduced. When the time came, would he be able to deal with the situation of tigers and wolves surrounding the divine Dragon Island? When Fong Yi saw Su Quan leading Song Qing-shu in, her eyes went straight. Before she had time to speak, Su Quan spoke first. She pointed at Fong Yi and asked Song Qing-shu, "Good little brother, do you think this big sister is beautiful?" Song Qing-shu looked at Fong Yi confidently. His eyes were so strange to Fong Yi. Just as she was about to be scared, she heard Song Qing-shu say, "Just so. I can't compare to big sister." Looking at Fong Yi's ashen face, Su Quan was obviously very satisfied with this answer. She smiled and said, "Good little brother, just make do with it tonight. In the future, after the matter is finished, big sister will accompany you again." Fong Yi was confused. Su Quan had already come in front of her. She pouted at Song Qing-shu and said, "Later, you'll serve him for me. Don't worry, he won't refuse you now." Fong Yi's face was pale. Su Quan thought that she was going to refuse, so she took the opportunity to threaten in a low voice, "I can tie you up and give you some aphrodisiac. I hope you won't challenge my patience." Seeing Fong Yi silently nod, she said loudly, "My little brother will be my honored guest in the future. Naturally, I should treat him with the etiquette of an honored guest. Fong Yi, you will be his maidservant in the future and take good care of his daily life. You can't refuse any of his requests. I said anything. Do you understand?" Looking at Su Quan's sharp eyes, Fong Yi nodded helplessly. She also wanted to see what medicine Song Qing-shu was selling in his gourd. After leading Song Qing-shu back to the room, before Fong Yi could speak, he spoke first, "Take off your clothes." "What?" Fong Yi was angry. She came to Song Qing-shu's side and asked in a low voice, "Brother Song, what's going on? Didn't my sister just ask you to listen to me? Why don't you listen to my first sentence?" Song Qing-shu looked a little angry. He stood up and walked out. "I'm going to find my sister." "Hey!" Fong Yi hurriedly pulled him back. Looking at Song Qing-shu, who had a different temperament, she was secretly shocked. Could it be that he was under the influence of Madam Cult Leader? Fong Yi had only heard that Su Quan knew this evil skill, but she didn't expect that it really existed. "I'll take it off." Fong Yi pouted and sulked. She thought that he had seen what he wanted to see, so there was no harm in taking it off again. Halfway through, she was hugged by Song Qing-shu. She originally wanted to ask something, but Song Qing-shu's wanton and hot kiss quickly blocked Fong Yi's lips, making her body heat up quickly. It was her first time tasting the forbidden fruit, so her body was a little uncomfortable. But after tasting the forbidden fruit, Fong Yi also enjoyed that feeling very much, so she didn't refuse his roughness. Outside the window, Su Quan had been carefully listening to the sounds in the room. She felt that something was wrong just now and suspected that Song Qing-shu was pretending to be crazy. She wanted to test him, but when she saw that he pushed Fong Yi down without hesitation, she finally felt relieved. She wanted to leave, but the wonderful sound inside seemed to have strange magic. It made Su Quan's legs seem to be nailed to the ground. She stayed where she was and listened curiously. Chapter 271. The next morning, Su Quan, who was eating breakfast in the lobby, saw Fong Yi being pulled over by Song Qing-shu with a flushed face. Her expression suddenly became extremely strange. "Every minute is worth 1,000 gold. Why don't the two of you rest a little longer?" Fong Yi wanted to find a hole to hide in, but Song Qing-shu didn't care and picked up the steam bun on the table to eat. Su Quan looked at him with a smile. "Good brother, did Miss Fong satisfy you last night?" Song Qing-shu seemed to be stumped. He hurriedly drank a bowl of water and said vaguely, "Everything else was fine, but there was a little regret." This time, not only Su Quan, but even Fong Yi also curiously raised her head and asked in unison, "What regret?" "She's not a virgin anymore." Song Qing-shu casually dropped a heavy bomb. Fong Yi was so angry that she wanted to vomit blood. Wasn't her virginity broken by this heartless man? She didn't expect him to turn against her so quickly. Fong Yi also couldn't help but smile. Miss Fong has long been someone's wife. Naturally, she's not a virgin anymore. Then will her husband come and beat me? Song Qing-shu raised his head and asked foolishly. Su Quan glanced at Fong Yi and stretched out a slender jade finger in front of Song Qingshu. First, her husband can't beat you. Second, her husband is already dead, so you don't have to worry. Fong Yi was secretly shocked when she heard this. She carefully looked at Song Qingshu. Last night, Fong Yi was too tired in the room. After they finished, she fell asleep, so she didn't have the time to ask him what was going on. But now, she could basically confirm that he had indeed lost his mind. If that's the case, then sister, do you have a husband? Song Qingshu's next question made Su Quan's smile stiffen on her face. She thought for a while and didn't intend to tell him. You will naturally know this in the future. Oh, Song Qingshu was obviously just asking casually and had no intention of pursuing matter. For the rest of the journey, the two women each had their own ulterior motives. One kept weaving all kinds of wonderful lies for Song Qingshu, and the other secretly tried to wake him up. As a result, after Song Qingshu turned around and told on her, Fong Yi no longer dared to tell the truth to Song Qingshu. Every day, she could only stare at his back and contemplate. My good brother, after we go to the island this time, you should treat yourself as a special envoy sent by the Qing Emperor. I will teach you what to say when the time comes. Su Quan tugged at Song Qingshu's sleeve and instructed. She then raised her head to look at Fong Yi. And you, change into a man's attire and pretend to be Lord Song's servant. Special envoy? This name sounds familiar. A trace of doubt flashed across Song Qingshu's face. Fong Yi was immediately overjoyed. She took the opportunity to say, Brother Song, you are the deputy chief of the imperial bodyguards of the Manchurian Qing. You're the most powerful expert under the Tatar emperor. Do I need you to talk too much? Fong Yi still wanted to say more, but Su Quan casually slapped her in the face. Yes, Fong Yi's heart was filled with hatred, but she couldn't beat him and was poisoned. She had no choice but to swallow her anger. It sounds quite interesting. Is the special envoy the imperial envoy? A minister? Song Qingshu asked doubtfully. Su Quan thought for a while and nodded. More or less. It's just that the imperial envoy is sent with great fanfare by the court. The special envoy acts in secret. Song Qingshu asked, Then what should I say when the time comes? Su Quan thought for a while and felt that it was too complicated. The current Song Qingshu might not remember it. She could only say, Let Fong Yi help you with the specifics. What you need to do is to remain calm and provide force to intimidate when necessary. After saying that, Su Quan pulled Fong Yi aside and explained in detail. In the Battle of Shengjing, the Shun Long Jiao troops led by Su Quan were completely annihilated. They lost almost half of the elite experts of the Shun Long Jiao. In recent years, because she wantonly purged the elders of Shun Long Jiao, it had already aroused widespread dissatisfaction. Usually, they could rely on Hong Antong and her prestige to suppress them. But this time, the losses were too heavy. Su Quan was worried that some people in the Jiao would take this opportunity to rise in revolt. Not long ago, her confidant on the island sent news that Hong Li had already sent 3 of his 5 great generals, Li Shiyao, Zhao Hui, and Hai Lansha, to lead 3 armies to the Shunlong Island. They threatened that as long as the Shunlong Jiao handed over the murderer Su Quan, they would immediately retreat. As a result, Su Quan did not dare to directly return to the Shunlong Island. Although she knew that Hong Antong doted on her, compared to his power, she might be sacrificed without hesitation. Originally, Su Quan planned to leave, but thinking that she would have to face the pursuit of both Hong Li and the Shunlong Jiao in the future, she shuddered. In addition, she was reluctant to give up the foundation she had laid in the Shunlong Jiao for many years. Finally, Su Quan decided to return to the Shunlong Island. But she was not stupid enough to go back without any preparation. Su Quan, who had always been smart, quickly thought of using external forces to protect her safety. Her influence was more in the Shunlong Jiao. At this critical moment, she could not rely on them. In Su Quan's mind, there were only 2 candidates. One was her father, Su Yin. With his martial arts and wisdom, it was not difficult for him to help her seize the Shunlong Jiao. But Su Quan had hated her biological father since she was a child. Even in this almost desperate situation, she was not willing to ask him. Soon, the other candidate floated into her mind. Su Quan did not know why she subconsciously thought of Song Qing-shu. Perhaps it was because his martial arts was enough to make people feel at ease. Or perhaps it was because they had entered deep into the tiger's den. At the same time, when she was completely annihilated, Song Qing-shu was able to retreat safely. After arriving in the capital, Su Quan heard that the Tong family was dealing with Wei Xiaobao's widow, and that Song Qing-shu was protecting them. Su Quan suddenly had a bright idea. She seized the opportunity to rescue Fong Yi from the Shun Tianfu's prison. In fact, although Su Quan's martial arts could be considered good, it was far from the level of being able to rescue people from the capital's prison. But she had another unique skill, which was the art of manipulation. It was not difficult for her to control a few prison guards. After rescuing Fong Yi, Su Quan threatened and lured her to poison Song Qing-shu. After a series of means, she finally achieved her goal. Of course, Su Quan did not tell Fong Yi the ins and outs of all this. She only secretly taught her some things to pay attention to. The three of them arrived at a small seaside town. There was a secret stronghold of the Divine Dragon cult. The cult had long received the news that Su Quan was about to return to the island. Therefore, they sent one of the 5 dragon envoys, the Yellow Dragon Envoy, Jin, to welcome her. In the Divine Dragon cult, other than the cult leader and his wife, the 5 dragon envoys had the most distinguished status. Their martial arts and scheming were considered outstanding in the cult. Previously, Ambassador White Dragon Zhong Zhiling was executed by Su Quan on some pretext. Coincidentally, the position of Ambassador White Dragon fell into Wei Xiaobao's hands. But now that Wei Xiaobao had died suddenly, the position of Ambassador White Dragon became vacant. Su Quan glanced at Song Qing-shu. In the end, she still shook her head. A mere White Dragon envoy, he probably did not care about him. If only Song Qing-shu had always been as obedient as he was now. With his help, coupled with her many years of painstaking efforts, it was not impossible for her to completely control the Divine Dragon cult. Why would she need to rely on other people's whims? However, Su Quan also knew that this was not realistic. Right now, in order to control Song Qing-shu, she already had to use her internal energy every day. Coupled with a certain amount of medicine, she was barely able to do it. Su Quan made up her mind that after the storm subsided, she must seize the opportunity to get rid of Song Qing-shu. Otherwise, when he wakes up, she would not be able to bear the other party's revenge. Subordinate Yellow Dragon Envoy Jin respectfully greets Madam. Hong Jiaozhu will enjoy immortal good fortune forever, his longevity the same as the heavens. After Jin respectfully saluted, his pair of shifty eyes rolled around, quietly sizing up Su Quan's alluring, delicate body. If it was an ordinary person, they would think that Su Quan was still favored by Hong Jiaozhu, that Hong Jiaozhu even sent a dignified 5-dragon envoy to personally welcome her back to the island. But the exceptionally intelligent Su Quan immediately sensed something unusual. Among the 5-dragon envoys, Jin could be said to have the least ability. He was only a bootlicker. It was because he had always been standing on the side of the cult leader and Madame that he was able to sit firmly on the cult leader's throne. As the trusted aide of the two, although Jin had always been lecherous and shameless, he had never dared to look at the beautiful Su Quan. But today, he actually dared to use his gaze to disrespect her. Su Quan very quickly realized that perhaps there was a change on the island. Only then did Jin, who was as timid as a mouse, grow bolder. Jin, right? On the side, Song Qing-shu noticed the other party's vulgar gaze and immediately muttered, "What kind of lousy name is this? The pronunciation is the same as a reproductive organ." As expected of the Yellow Dragon Envoy, Song Qing-shu deliberately emphasized on the word Huang. How could a person like Jin not hear the insult in it? He immediately flew into a rage. "That disgraceful little gigolo. Who do you think you are? If it weren't for Madame's face, I would tear your stinky mouth apart." Su Quan frowned. When did Jean dare to shout in front of her like this? It seemed that the situation on the island was indeed not optimistic. She then said lightly, "He is indeed not a thing. He just happens to be the #1 expert of the Manchurian Qing." Song Qingshu? Cold sweat immediately dripped down Jin's face. Although Hong Antong had returned to seclusion and kept quiet about his injury, the rumors in Jianghu still spread. Everyone basically knew that the cult leader with invincible martial arts was defeated by a young man. And in recent years, the other party could be said to have a brilliant record. Since the death of Dongfeng Bubi, Song Qingshu had been recognized as the #1 expert of the martial arts world under the rule of the Manchurian Qing. Wouldn't such a person be able to crush him like an ant? Jin was best at changing the direction of the wind. He hurriedly smiled apologetically in front of Song Qingshu and said, "I didn't know that Master Song had come in person. I have eyes but did not recognize Mount Tai. I hope you will forgive me." Song Qingshu's eyebrows moved, and his expression was a little strange. It seemed that he enjoyed this kind of flattery very much. However, he did not expect that the other party's flattery would be endless. From the Battle of Mount Tai to the challenge of the Red Flower Festival, Song Qingshu was a little tired of listening. He disdainfully waved his hand to stop him. Jin returned to Su Quan with a little embarrassment. He looked at her nervously and asked in a low voice, "Madam, why is he with you?" "Why not?" Su Quan sneered softly. "Master Song is my friend. This time, he followed me to the Divine Dragon Island to discuss the alliance with the cult leader." Chapter 272. A group of people boarded the ship of the Divine Dragon Cult. Su Quan was arranged to stay in the most luxurious cabin. She quickly called Song Qingshu and Fong Yi to her side. Seeing that she was alone and only had 2 people who could barely be considered as helpers, she could not help but be worried and did not know what to say for a moment. "Madam," Yellow Dragon Envoy Jin asked for an audience. There was a knock on the door, and the tone was more respectful than before. "Come in," Su Quan said lightly. She leaned sideways on the table and did not look at Jin, who came in. She only gently blew the tea in the cup. Jin thought that Su Quan would nervously ask about the situation on the island, but she did not say anything until she returned to the room. As a result, it was Jin who could not sit still. Thinking of Song Qingshu beside Su Quan, he understood that things had changed. He felt that it was necessary to do something good. If Su Quan could safely get through this crisis, he would definitely benefit in the future. However, when he entered the room and saw that Su Quan was as arrogant as usual, Jin could not help but feel a trace of anger in his heart. This stinking whore, why is she so magical? When the time comes, if the cult leader nods, who knows how many men will ride on you, how many men will press you? Of course, Jin, who had always been a fence-sitter, did not dare to show all this on his face. Instead, he said earnestly, "Madam is really relaxed, but does Madam know that you are about to face a disaster?" "Oh." Su Quan slowly put the teacup back on the table. "Tell me." It was not that Su Quan was putting on an act, but Su Quan understood that she was just playing the empty fort strategy at the moment. She was very clear about the virtues of these people in the Divine Dragon Cult. The reality was cruel. If they saw her weakness, then they would swallow her up in an instant. The weak were prey to the strong. This was the law of their world. Seeing that Su Quan did not care, Jin, who was still hesitant, finally made up his mind. He ran to the door and confirmed that there was no one around. Then he came back and whispered, "Madam, do you know that subordinate is here to catch you?" Su Quan felt a chill in her heart. Could it be that the situation on the Divine Dragon Island was so bad? But she still remained calm and sneered. "Just you?" Jin hurriedly smiled apologetically. "This subordinate has always been loyal and devoted to Foreign. How would I dare to disrespect Foreign?" But in his heart, he was cursing incessantly. It turned out that Jin had brought many experts from the cult with him this time, so it was not difficult to catch Su Quan. But when he saw Song Qingshu, he could not help but hesitate. In the past 2 years, Song Qingshu's reputation had risen, and he wasn't an ordinary rising star. Instead, he was an existence that had suppressed many top-notch experts. Even if Jin didn't have a direct understanding of the martial arts of Taoist priest Su and Zhuolong Chan, as one of the 5 dragon envoys, he knew that last time Hong Antong was injured in the hands of Song Qing-shu. Therefore, Jin understood that if he really wanted to take action, his subordinates might not have the ability to capture Su Quan. However, if they didn't complete the task, they would still be punished when they returned to the Divine Dragon Island. Thinking of those harsh punishments in the cult, Jin couldn't help but shiver. Finally, after thinking it over, he decided to gamble. After all, Hong Antong loved this charming lady very much, so he might not really hand her over to Shengjing's sect. Seeing Jin standing there, his face was cloudy and uncertain. He didn't continue to speak. Su Quan was secretly annoyed and had no choice but to open her mouth and ask, "What is going on?" Jin suddenly woke up and quickly explained, "Last time Madame went to Shengjing, she killed Fu Qinggan." Hong Li was very angry. He sent several armies to destroy our divine dragon Jiao. Su Quan coldly snorted. No matter how brave and good at fighting those 8 banners cavalry under Hong Li are, when they go into the water, they will turn from dragons to prawns. Our divine dragon Jiao has always been good at fighting in the water, so why should we be afraid of him? That may be the case, Jin said with an embarrassed smile. But this time, Hong Li is not as small as before. It's clear that he doesn't care about the loss. Although our divine dragon Jiao is good at fighting in the water, our manpower is far less than Hong Li's army. Nowadays, the world is in chaos. I don't believe that Hong Li is willing to waste his elite troops on my divine dragon island. Su Quan's heart was angry. This Hong Antong usually looked awe-inspiring, but in an emergency, he couldn't even see through this. It seemed like he was just a hot-blooded and brave person. But there is news that Shandong's Golden Snake Camp will also respond to Hong Li and send the Navy to participate in the war. Jin carefully looked at Su Quan. Su Quan's heart thumped. In the past, Yuan Chengji's Golden Snake Camp was based overseas. They were very good at fighting in the water. Because of the conflict of interests, Divine Dragon Jiao's Golden Snake Camp often fought with them. Finally, they reached a compromise. With the Yellow Sea as the boundary, the south belonged to Golden Snake Camp, and the north belonged to Divine Dragon Jiao. In recent years, although the focus of Golden Snake Camp had shifted to Shandong and the Navy was somewhat neglected, a starving camel was still bigger than a horse. If Golden Snake Camp really sent troops, then Divine Dragon Jiao's advantage over Shengjing would be completely gone. Where did this news come from? Su Quan asked in a sinking voice. This news should be accurate. According to the spy's report, the high-level figures of Golden Snake Camp have already come to Bao Wangfu to discuss the dispatch of troops. Hearing Jin's words, the nearby Song Qingshu's eyes lit up, but they soon dimmed again. Even so, when soldiers come, we will deal with the enemy. When the water comes, we will use the earth to block it. The sect should plan how to meet the enemy. So why did they send you to catch this lady? Su Quan slightly raised her eyebrows and stared at Jin as she asked. Jin quickly looked away. In the sect, it was widely said that Su Quan was good at this. He didn't want to confusedly become her puppet at this delicate moment. Looking at Su Quan's pair of beautiful feet on the ground, his eyes flashed with greed. Reporting to Madam, the main thing is that Shengjing sent a message if what? Su Quan actually already knew the truth, but she didn't want to expose herself as a spy in the sect. Madam, please don't be angry if this subordinate says it. Jin clenched his teeth and quickly said, Shengjing said that as long as Divine Dragon Jiao offers Madam the culprit, they will withdraw their troops. You all believe this? Su Quan sneered. Of course this subordinate doesn't believe it. Jin quickly expressed his loyalty. But many brothers in the sect believe it. They think that the disaster was caused by Madam. If Madam is sacrificed, thousands of brothers' blood can be avoided in vain. That's quite worthwhile. Jin's words were not entirely true, because he was actually one of these people. Then what did the leader say? Su Quan scoffed. The leader hasn't expressed his position, But recently the brothers in the sect are very emotional. Even the leader can't suppress it, so he sent people to capture Madam. Seeing Su Quan's face turn cold, Jin quickly explained, but the leader has always remembered Madam's kindness, so he sent this subordinate here. If it were the other 5 dragon envoys, I'm afraid he wouldn't be so polite. Jin carefully put in a good word for Hong Antong. He didn't want any rumors to reach Hong Antong's ears. After all, the two of them were husband and wife. If in the future they reconciled, and Su Quan turned around and sold him, that would be a tragedy. Su Quan knew that what Jin said was the truth. Among the 5 dragon envoys of Divine Dragon Cult, only Jin had always been close to Hong Antong and herself. The other 4 envoys had long been dissatisfied with the cult leader and her wantonly promoting new people these past few years. This time, taking advantage of the pressure of Sheng Jing's sex army, of course, the several of them were eager to get rid of her. However, Su Quan was not grateful to Hong Antong at all. She knew her nominal husband too well. Sending Jin here was just to give him a better face. If he really didn't have the thought of sacrificing her when the people on the island were discussing this matter, Hong Antong should have used thunderous means to suppress it, and it would not have formed the current situation. At this moment, Su Quan's confidence was shaken. The reason why she returned to Divine Dragon Island was that she still had a glimmer of hope for Hong Antong. After all, they had been husband and wife for so many years. His love for her was not fake. But now that she knew that even Hong Antong might decide to sacrifice her, Su Quan suddenly became physically and mentally exhausted. This lady will not make things difficult for Yellow Dragon Envoy. I will go with you to Divine Dragon Island and listen to the leader's punishment. Yellow Dragon Envoy's kindness today. Su Quan will remember it in her heart. One day, I will definitely repay it. I need some time to calm down. You can go now. Su Quan waved her hand, indicating Jin to go out first. This subordinate has always been loyal and devoted to Jiaozhu and Madam. I hope that Jiaozhu and Madam will enjoy immortal blessings together and live as long as the heavens. I don't dare to ask for repayment. I don't dare. Although Jin's mouth said he didn't dare, the uncontrollable joy on his face deeply betrayed him. This bootlicker is really the same as Wei Xiaobao. He even learned his words. When Jin disappeared outside the door, Su Quan spat in disgust. Turned out that before Wei Xiaobao came to Shunlong Jiao, every time the Shunlong Jiao people would shout that Hong Jiaozhu would enjoy immortal blessings forever and live as long as the heavens. In the end, Wei Xiaobao added the 3 words in Madam, which made Hong Antong and Su Quan very happy. Unexpectedly, he was conferred the title White Dragon Envoy. Su Quan stood up and pushed the window open to look at the surging waves of the sea outside. Her mood was very complicated. It was not that she did not think of running away, but right now the sea was boundless. Even if she wanted to give up, it was already too late. Turning her head around, she looked at the bored Song Qing Shu sitting on the side. Her voice was filled with weakness. Good Didi, this time will you help Jiejie? No problem, as long as I am here. I guarantee Jiejie will be safe and sound. Song Qing Shu replied foolishly, and then he laughed mischievously. I am still waiting for the day. Don't say it. Su Quan angrily glared at him, but her body softened. She thought that if she could safely get through this crisis, what harm was there in taking advantage of him this time? In any case, all the men in the world were unreliable. It was just taking what they needed, that's all. There will come a day when she will dominate other men's fate and not let other men decide her own fate. Suddenly, she noticed Fang Yi's eyes were rolling around. With a cold laugh, Su Quan said, Fang Yi, you don't need to have any crooked ideas. Although right now, I can't even protect myself. You and I are actually grasshoppers tied to the same string. No matter what you think in your heart, in the eyes of other people in Shunlong Jiao, you are Ben Foren's direct descendant. Once I lose my power, your end will not be any better. Don't tell me you still hope that they will give you the leopard embryo tendon altering pill antidote. Subordinate does not dare. Fang Yi's heart trembled. She quickly said, It's best if you don't dare. Su Quan snorted. As long as you do your best for Ben Foreign, after this time, I will give the leopard embryo tendon altering pill antidote to you and Mu Giant Pain. Chapter 273. The group arrived at the Divine Dragon Island. When the followers saw Su Quan, they quickly saluted. When they were about to send someone to report to Hong Antong, Su Quan raised her hand and said, "No need, I'll go see him myself." Although the anti-so trend was prevalent on the island, Su Quan's prestige was still there. These subordinates subconsciously didn't dare to disobey her order and watched as she walked to the main hall. Along the way, Fong quietly asked around but didn't see Mu Giant Pain. Unknowingly, the group arrived at the entrance of the main hall. Seeing Su Quan stop, Fong suspiciously looked into the room. She saw Hong Antong high up in the hall. On one side were the blue, black, and red dragon envoys. On the other side was a person dressed like a Taoist, holding a horsetail whisk in his hand. He looked quite arrogant. Following them were two llamas. Their eyes shone with golden light. One could tell at a glance that they were masters. Unfortunately, one of them had already lost an arm, and the other one had a scimitar on his back. His eyes were quite ruthless and evil. Fong took a glance at them and quickly looked away. Below them was a man and a woman. The man was young and handsome, while the woman was young and lively. She had a trace of nobility about her. They looked like the sons and daughters of rich families. Fong didn't know why they appeared in this land of tigers and wolves. The people in the main hall were arguing until their faces were red. When they saw Su Quan's group, they all stopped talking and looked at them. The main hall fell into a strange silence. I have been away from the island for several days. I didn't expect so many guests to come to the sect. Su Quan glanced around and quickly recognized everyone. That Taoist was the #1 expert under Prince Bao Hong Li, True Jade. As for the two llamas, one was Song Jie and the other was Blood Knife Ancestor. They were both first-rate experts under Prince Ali Buj of Mongolia. Hong Antong had also surrendered to Ali Buj in name, so Su Quan had met the two of them once in the past. Su Quan recognized that young man and woman. They were her father Su Yin's subordinates, the most outstanding experts of the Hidden Intelligence Bureau. They were also the Yelu imperial family's most outstanding young experts, Yelu Qi and Yelu Nancian. After the initial shock, Hong Antong had already returned to normal. He quickly laughed and said, "Madam has come back at the right time. Heroes, this is my wife. Madam, these are the world-famous masters. This is True Jade." Before Hong Antong could finish his introduction, a cold voice rang out in the hall. "Are you my sister's husband?" Hong Antong was stupefied. Only then did he notice Song Qing Shu beside Su Quan. His expression changed slightly, and he hurriedly laughed dryly. "So it's Lord Song. What wind blew today to blow your excellency over as well?" He was both surprised and delighted. He was surprised that he did not receive any news in advance, so he was not prepared at all. He was delighted that Song Qing Shu had walked right into his trap. The Divine Dragon Island was his territory. This time, he could seize the opportunity to get rid of this big trouble. Who would have thought that Song Qing Shu would not pay attention to him? Instead, he muttered to himself, "Other than me, there is no one who could be Jiejia's man." As soon as his voice fell, he pounced toward Hong Antong like an arrow leaving the bow. Among the people present, the 5 dragon envoys could be considered as first-class masters in the Divine Dragon cult. But in the entire Jianghu, they were only second- or third-rate masters. Their realm was too far away from Song Qingshu's group, so they were completely unable to react. However, even if they reacted, they did not intend to stop Hong Antong. On the contrary, they were happy to see Hong Antong fight to the death with the strong enemy. Although the people on the other side had higher martial arts skill, each had their own motive. Seeing Song Qingshu attacked Hong Antong without saying a word, they were even more eager to see the two of them injure each other. Hence, they did not make a move to stop him. Seeing this, Su Quan was anxious. She was about to speak up to stop him, but suddenly her heart was moved. If Song Qingshu killed Hong Antong this time, it would be more advantageous to her. Thereupon, she pretended to be shocked and was speechless. Hong Antong's voice had just fallen when he discovered that the opponent's biting cold palm wind had already arrived in front of him. He could not help but hold his breath and promptly raised his palm to meet the attack. Hong Antong was indeed worthy of being a big shot of the underworld. Although he hastily met the enemy, his moves were not the least bit disorderly. He understood that this was the most dangerous battle in his life, so although he was panicked, he was not disorderly at all. After the initial exchange of palms, Hong Antong felt his blood and qi churning. He knew that although the opponent was young, he did not know what kind of fortuitous encounter his opponent's martial arts skill was above his own. Thereupon he no longer fought recklessly. His pair of palms flew up and down, displaying the subtlety of his moves. Step by step, he climbed up to the position of Jiaozhu in the divine dragon cult, where the strong preyed on the weak. It could be said that he had been through hundreds of battles. Not to mention his martial arts skill, just his combat awareness was not something ordinary martial art masters could compare with. The people in the hall saw the two people's figures flying up and down, attacking and defending each other. They were all dazzled. The divine dragon cult people secretly admired them. Their Jiaozhu's divine skill was indeed matchless. The rest of the martial art masters were secretly thinking about how they would make their move if they were in the same situation. The two of them had already exchanged more than a dozen moves. Hong Antong groaned inwardly. Although relying on his several decades of experience, he was barely able to fight Song Qingshu to a draw, but he understood that if they continued to fight, he would inevitably be defeated. Hastily, he found an opening and raised both hands. Dozens of poisonous tongues shot out from his sleeves toward Song Qingshu's body. "Be careful!" Fong Yi just shouted, but suddenly she was taken aback. She turned her head to look at Su Quan by her side. Turned out Su Quan was also shouting the same two words as her. The people in the hall, including Hong Antong, thought that Su Quan was warning them to be careful, but Fong Yi knew that the other party was worried about Song Qingshu. Momentarily, she could not help staring blankly on the spot. Noticing Fong Yi's gaze, a rare captivating blush flashed across Su Quan's face. She glared at Fong Yi and said, "What are you looking at? If you look at me again, I will gouge out your eyes." Seeing the overwhelming number of poisonous snakes, Song Qingshu could not help but be startled. Promptly, he sent out a dense palm energy in front of his body. As soon as the poisonous snakes collided with this wall of air, their bodies exploded one after another. Song Qingshu had just breathed a sigh of relief. But to his horror, he discovered that although several of the poisonous snakes' bodies had exploded into bloody foam, leaving only their heads, they did not stop at all. They still stretched out their ferocious fangs to bite his body. This was also the reason why Song Qingshu's experience was too little. Everyone in the divine dragon cult knew that even if a poisonous snake's head was chopped into two pieces, it would still bite people. However, Song Qingshu did not know that snakes had this habit. Therefore, he was careless and suffered a hidden loss. Seeing that the distance between them was so close, the rest of the experts in the hall all thought that Song Qingshu would not be able to escape the fate of being poisoned to death. In their hearts, they could not help but despise Hong Antong's sneak attack. But then they thought, in a life-and-death struggle, martial art was also used to kill, poisonous snakes were also used to kill. What was the difference? Not to mention, everyone here was Song Qingshu's enemy. They were all happy to see Song Qingshu bitten to death by these poisonous snakes. A sharp light flashed in Song Qingshu's eyes. Just as he was about to use the traceless sand to dodge, he heard several muffled so noises. The snakes' heads in front of him were hit by some unknown hidden weapon, falling to the side. Everyone's gaze shifted to the woman sitting below. It was Princess Liao, Yalun Nanxian. Noticing everyone's gazes, Yalun Nanxian nonchalantly clapped her hands. "What are you all looking at?" In a martial arts competition, one should rely on one's true ability. This young miss hates this kind of sneak attack the most. Everyone saw her put down the melon seeds. Only then did they understand that she had actually infused her internal energy into the melon seeds, launching later but arriving first, accurately cutting off all the snake's heads. This level of accuracy and internal energy shocked the experts from the other sex, thinking to themselves, how old is she? And yet she's already this good. In a few years, I'm afraid there won't be many opponents in this world who are her match. Yaluchi couldn't help but shake his head with a bitter smile. This cousin of his had always been fearless. She only did things according to her whims. He originally wanted to tell Yelu Nansien that this was a battle against an enemy. She only wanted to kill her opponent. There was no need to care about Jianghu's rules. But then he suddenly remembered that his martial arts weren't as high as hers. If he said that, he would definitely be rebuked by her. At that time, he would be speechless and lose face for the great Liao royal family. Hong Yantong had already taken this opportunity to distance himself from Song Qingshu, silently calling her a little slut. But Liao was a Mongolian vassal. In theory, they were his allies. So it wasn't appropriate for him to reprimand her. He could only say to Song Qingshu, although this seat and official song had some enmity, it wasn't a deep grudge. Why must we fight to the death? Song Qingshu foolishly replied, elder sister's man can only be me. You want to be her husband? Of course you're seeking death. The scene immediately became silent. Everyone knew that the elder sister he was talking about was Su Quan. The expressions of the people in the sect were extremely interesting. The other outsiders were more than happy to watch the show. True Jade Ancestor, Blood Knife Ancestor, and the others all recognized Song Qingshu. Although they felt that he was a little more stupid than they remembered, they didn't think much of it. Hong Antong's face turned green and white. If there was any disciple that dared to be so rude to Su Quan, he would have already thrown them into the snake cave and let them suffer the poison of the five-color dragon. But Song Qingshu's martial arts were too strong. It took him a lot of effort to stop. How could he dare to fight again? Song Qingshu didn't pay attention to him. He walked in front of Yelu Nansien, staring blankly at the young girl in a warrior's attire. Yelu Nansien felt uncomfortable being stared at by him. She casually waved her hand. If you want to thank me, there's no need. It's just that I've always admired people with great martial arts. I couldn't bear to see a young master die in the snake's kiss. Song Qingshu looked at her with a strange expression. He murmured, Miss, have we met before? Yelu Nansien thought about the time when she was secretly spying on him in Shengjing. He coincidentally broke into her room. Hearing him mention this matter, she was secretly relieved. This little pervert doesn't seem to be stupid. Unfortunately, before she finished thinking, Song Qingshu continued, Forget it. I've seen at least 800, if not 1,000 beautiful women in my life. Maybe she's a lover from a brothel. There's no need to ask for a name in a sex trade. Yelu Nansien slammed the table, about to explode, but Song Qingshu continued, I came here to tell you. Who asked you to save me just now? Do you think I can't escape? Yelu Nansien angrily said, Just think of it as my dirty hands. Song Qingshu laughed, his eyes looking up at the sky. Of course, my martial arts are #1 in the world. A mere snake's head, of course, I can escape. Yelu Nansien was originally angry, but hearing him say this, she calmed down. She thought, this time he doesn't seem to be very smart, saying that he's #1 in the world. How could he dare to say something like that? Chapter 274. Everyone in the hall paled. They didn't know there was such a hidden master. Judging from his roar, his internal energy was probably at the top of the world. Song Qingshu was startled. His expression also became serious, his eyes focused on an old man walking out from the back hall. This old man had a high nose and deep eyes. His face was covered with a snow-white beard. Each strand of his hair was like iron. The way he walked was quite imposing, but unfortunately, that imposing aura was ruined by his unkempt hair. Su Quan was startled, wondering where did Hong Antong find such an expert? Although Song Qingshu's martial arts skill was superior, his brain was, after all, not very bright. If they fought, perhaps he would suffer a loss, and then she would lose her biggest barrier. Sect leader, may I know who this old mister is? Su Quan hurriedly asked. Everyone else in the hall looked at Hong Antong. clearly having the same question in their hearts. Hong Antong laughed, stood up, and introduced, "This is this seat's good friend, Mr. Ouyang, one of the top 5 in the sword meet of Mount Hua. Western poison, Ouyang Feng." The faces of the masters in the hall became unnatural, especially True Jade. He suddenly regretted coming to Divine Dragon Island this time, being too careless. Blood Knife Ancestor and Songjia looked at each other, thinking things weren't going well. This time, if this person was added to Prince's plan, it would be a bit inappropriate. Yellow Nanshin's face was also dark. With this sudden change, they could only act according to the situation. From the moment he walked out, Ouyang Feng had been staring at Song Qingshu. Su Quan didn't have time to smooth things over before Ouyang Feng spoke. "Stinky brat, just now, were you the one who shamelessly boasted that your martial arts were #1 in the world?" Ouyang Feng's chi activity firmly locked onto Song Qingshu. Su Quan, who was standing at the edge, already felt that it was difficult to breathe. She was worried about Song Qingshu, who bore the brunt of the attack, who knew that when she looked back, Song Qingshu acted as if nothing had happened and calmly replied, "So what?" Ouyang Feng had been practicing the 9-yin manual in reverse for the past few years, and his mind was already in a mess. He couldn't even remember his own name in the past. The only thing he remembered was his desire to become the world's #1. Hearing Song Qingshu's shameless boasting, he was immediately enraged. His whole body shot towards Song Qingshu like a cannonball. There was no lack of Jianghu's top-notch experts present. When they saw that Ouyang Feng's thunderous attack was so powerful, they all frowned and wondered how they would deal with it if they were in Song Qingshu's position. Yilu Nanxian pondered for a moment. She was afraid that she could only use her agility to evade Ouyang Feng's attacks, but she'd already lost the initiative. Under Ouyang Feng's storm-like attacks, she might be able to last 100 or so moves, but in the end, she would still be defeated. For some reason, she was looking forward to seeing how Song Qingshu would deal with it. Yilu Nanxian was a martial arts prodigy that only appeared once in 100 years. At such a young age, she was already invincible among the younger generation of the kingdom of Liao. Even the king of the southern courtyard, Xiao Feng, had praised her martial arts skills. Because of this, although there were many handsome men pursuing her in Liao, Yilu Nanxian didn't even spare them a glance. In her mind, a man who couldn't even beat her, how could she have the face to be her husband? On the other hand, in the last 2 years, she heard that the Manchurian Qing also had a young, top-notch expert. Yilu Nanxian had known him for a long time, and she had long wanted to compete with Song Qingshu. Unfortunately, she never got what she wanted. This time, seeing him fight with the Western poison Ouyang Feng, not only would she benefit from it, she would also be able to assess their strengths. Thinking of this, Yilu Nanxian's heart was filled with excitement. On the side, Yilu Qin noticed her blushing face and smiled wryly to himself. This martial arts fanatic cousin of mine. On the stage, Song Qingshu's expression was solemn. Circulating his qi to his feet, he stamped his feet on the ground, causing the ground to tremble. Song Qingshu's body trembled for a moment, and his palms circulated 10% of his strength, exchanging a few palm strikes with Ouyang Feng. Ouyang Feng felt a strong force coming from his hand and couldn't help but feel suffocated. Before he could adjust his breathing, his opponent's body bent down like a bow, and his heel swept towards Ouyang Feng's head like a sharp iron whip. Ouyang Feng hurriedly used a strange movement technique to dodge 10 feet away. The people in the hall didn't expect that the world-shaking Western poison would be forced back by Song Qingshu in one move. They were all shocked, thinking that they might have to reevaluate Song Qingshu's strength. Song Qingshu also felt the air in his chest churning. Just now, Ouyang Feng didn't pay much attention to Song Qingshu at first, thinking that there was a limit to this young man's martial arts. In the end, he was too impatient and rash. Song Qingshu used the power of the earth to make Ouyang Feng suffer a small loss in one move. Ouyang Feng was also stunned, asking in disbelief, "Divine Dragon swings its tail, 18 dragon subduing palms? Are you an old beggar? But how come your beard and white hair are gone? And you look so young?" But he was also happy to see his prey, and although he suffered a small loss, he didn't take it to heart. Without waiting for his opponent to answer, he waved his palms and rushed forward again. Although Ouyang Feng was a bit deranged, he didn't forget his martial arts instincts. In his heart, he thought that his opponent was an expert of the same level as him. So naturally, he was 120% vigilant, holding back 20% of his strength in every move to avoid reckless attacks. Song Qingshu also let out a long roar. Without any hesitation, he attacked with the 18 dragon, subduing palms. Between the two of them, one style was strange and profound, the other simple and mellow. In just a dozen moves, there were several extremely dangerous situations, but they were all cleverly resolved by each other. They couldn't help but admire each other. As the two of them moved their hands and feet, the wind, created by their movements, forced the people around them to step back. Yilu Nanxian was dazzled, thinking to herself, I didn't expect Song Qingshu's martial arts to have reached such a high level. Compared to him, my martial arts are lacking, but my moves are not necessarily inferior to his. But I've seen Great King Xiao use the same 18 dragons subduing palms. Great King Xiao seems to be even more powerful. Little baby, your martial arts are only SOSO. After another 10 moves, the two of them separated. Ouyang Feng looked at Song Qingshu from the corner of his eyes. Crazy old man, your martial arts are also not bad. Song Qingshu replied. Too bad that's not enough. Ouyang Feng had just finished speaking when he squatted down on the ground, his hands bent to his shoulders. His mouth made gurgling noises, like a giant frog preparing to pounce. Toting stance. Those who were knowledgeable had already recognized this was Ouyang Feng's famous technique. As expected, the space between Song Qingshu's eyebrows became a bit more serious. Even though his mind was a bit muddled, he did not forget his martial arts instincts. At his level, he could quickly see the special characteristics of the toad technique. This technique was purely based on stillness. The whole body stored up power without releasing it. Once he revealed any flaws in his moves, he would receive a thunderous counterattack. Song Qingshu originally thought that if the enemy didn't make a move, he wouldn't make a move, but he suddenly realized that with every gurgling noise Ouyang Feng made, his aura rose by a fraction. If he didn't make a move, when Ouyang Feng's aura reached its peak, he wouldn't be able to withstand that strike. Yilu Nanxian stared unblinkingly at the scene, afraid to miss even the slightest detail. She watched as Song Qingshu's palms flipped. The speed was so fast that his palms couldn't be seen. She could only faintly see a ball of air slowly growing bigger in his hands. In the end, Song Qingshu's entire upper body also moved, a ball of true energy condensed on top of his head, ready to be thrown out at any time. The corner of Yilu Nanxian's mouth twitched, subconsciously retreating another zhong. The other people in the hall weren't fools. The two people on the scene were ready to strike. The moment they clashed, it would be earth-shattering. If they didn't retreat now, they might be caught in the crossfire later. Ouyang Feng's cheeks bulged more and more. His belly swelled more and more. The gurgling noises of the toad echoed throughout the Divine Dragon Cult's hall, causing those with weaker cultivation to bleed from their mouths and noses. True Jade Master, Blood Knife Ancestor, Songjia, Yilu Qi, and the others also felt disgusted, hurriedly circulating their internal energy to resist. Everyone on the scene remained calm. Only Yilu Nanxian and Hong Antong were affected. Finally, Ouyang Feng's momentum reached its peak. He opened his mouth and spat out a stream of true energy directly towards Song Qingshu. Although the true energy was formless, wherever it passed, the hard marble slabs on the floor shattered into pieces, allowing others to witness its invincible power. Song Qingshu had also pushed the power of the 18 subduing dragon palms to its peak, bending his left leg slightly, his right arm bent inwards, his right palm drawing a circle in the air. This was the most powerful move of the 18 subduing dragon palms. Proud Dragon shows remorse. However, when Song Qingshu used it, it was different from the usual fast Proud Dragon shows remorse. This palm was pushed out very slowly, but no one dared to underestimate the power of this palm. A loud explosion rang out. The hall was filled with smoke and dust. Everyone felt a piercing pain in their eardrums. Not to mention the low-level disciples of the divine dragon cult. Even Yelu Nancian, Hong Antong, and the others were secretly frowning. After the explosion, a strong gust of wind spread out from the center of the explosion. Those with low-level martial arts were directly blown into the wall, vomiting blood, and those with high-level martial arts like True Jade Master and Blood Knife Ancestor were involuntarily pushed back, but their postures were not as bad. When the gust of wind hit her body, Yelun Nanshin's expression also changed, hurriedly retreating 3 steps before she could stabilize herself, leaving behind a few footprints that sank into the stone floor. On the other side, Hong Antong was also pushed back, but from the corner of his eye, he noticed that Yelun Nancian had stabilized herself. He hurriedly used his 1,000 caddy drop, crushing the stone floor with 1 foot, stopping after taking 2 steps back. However, forcing himself to circulate his chi like this caused a trace of red to flash across his face, a fishy taste in his mouth, forcing him to swallow back the blood. Hong Antong was also aware of his own difficulties. Now that the divine dragon cult was facing a great enemy, these people all had ulterior motives. This was a good opportunity to show everyone's martial arts level. If Hong Antong showed any signs of cowardice, this group of sharks would act as if they smelled blood. Each one of them would view him as a piece of juicy meat. Therefore, Hong Antong could only use this method, hoping to intimidate the various forces with ulterior motives. Sure enough, when the group of people steadied themselves, they saw Hong Antong only took 2 steps back, standing there like an unfathomable mountain, watching the battle in the hall. All the experts were bewildered. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.